Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the true Dragon Emperor and fall in love with Tiamat, Vados and Rias. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Awakening Scales. Dawn broke over Konoha, painting the Hokage monument in amber and gold. Naruto Uzumaki stood before his bathroom mirror, eyes fixed on the strange, iridescent markings that had appeared along his forearms overnight. They resembled scales, geometric patterns that caught the light and shifted colors from sapphire to emerald when he rotated his wrists. "What the hell?" he muttered, rubbing at them. Unlike a tattoo or paint, they seemed embedded within his skin, pulsing faintly with his heartbeat. 3 years had passed since the Fourth Great Ninja War. Peace had settled across the shinobi world like a comfortable blanket, sometimes too comfortable for someone who'd spent his entire life fighting for recognition and then survival. At 20, Naruto had grown taller, his features sharpened into those of a young man rather than the boisterous boy who had once painted graffiti on the very monument visible from his apartment window. The markings had started as a small patch on his right wrist 2 weeks ago. He'd dismissed it as a training injury, perhaps chakra burn from experimenting with new Rasengan variations. But they had spread, crawling up both arms like living tattoos, and now carried a faint warmth that intensified whenever he molded chakra. A knock at his door interrupted his examination. "Naruto. Mission briefing in 30 minutes. Shikamaru's voice carried the perpetual tone of someone who found everything troublesome yet handled it anyway. "Coming," Naruto called, hastily pulling on his long-sleeved black and orange jacket. Whatever these markings were, they could wait. Probably just some weird side effect of having both Kurama and the sage's power, he reasoned. Nothing worth bothering Sakura or Tsunade about yet. The Hokage Tower hummed with activity as he navigated its familiar corridors. Kakashi had settled into his role as 6th Hokage with the same aloof competence he brought to everything, though the paperwork remained his declared nemesis. "You're almost on time. I'm impressed," Kakashi remarked from behind his desk, visible eye crinkling in amusement. "Must be serious." Naruto grinned, scratching the back of his head. "Had to maintain my unpredictable reputation, sensei." Shikamaru leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "We've received reports of strange energy signatures at the Valley of End. Given its history and significance, Kakashi thought you should investigate." Quote, "Strange how?" Naruto asked, suddenly alert. Kakashi pushed a scroll across his desk. "Sensors describe it as unlike any chakra they've encountered, not quite natural energy either. It's causing distortions in the surrounding area, animals avoiding the region, unusual weather patterns. You think it's related to Kagaya somehow?" Naruto's expression hardened at the memory. "Unlikely, but we can't dismiss anything," Kakashi replied. "This is reconnaissance only, Naruto. Observe and report back. Yamato will meet you there." Naruto nodded, already turning to leave when an unfamiliar sensation rippled through his arms. The markings beneath his sleeves burned momentarily, resonating with something distant. His steps faltered. Something wrong. Shikamaru's sharp eyes missed nothing. "Nah, just eager to get moving," Naruto recovered, flashing his trademark grin. "Been too quiet around here lately." As he bounded across Konoha's rooftops toward the village gates, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling of wrongness that had settled in his gut. The markings pulsed in time with his heartbeat, growing warmer as he headed southwest toward the valley. "Hey, kid, something's off." Kurama's deep voice rumbled through his consciousness. "You feel it too?" Naruto leapt from the final building, landing in a crouch before straightening. "Not just feel it, I recognize it, somehow." The fox's tone carried unusual uncertainty. "It's ancient, older than me." That admission sent a chill through Naruto. Few things in existence predated the tailed beasts. The journey to the Valley of End normally took several hours at high speed, but Naruto pushed himself harder, arriving as afternoon shadows lengthened across the landscape. The massive statues of Hashirama and Madara stood sentinel over the waterfall, weathered by time and their previous battles. No sign of Yamato yet. The air hung still and heavy, unnaturally quiet without the usual sounds of wildlife. Naruto approached the center of the valley cautiously, senses extended. The markings beneath his sleeves now burned constantly, an insistent heat that demanded attention. "Screw it," he muttered, rolling up his sleeves to examine them. The scale-like patterns had spread further, now covering both arms from wrist to elbow. As he watched, they shimmered and pulsed in rhythm with something in the environment. The surface of the lake below the waterfall rippled, though no wind disturbed it. Concentric circles spread outward from a central point, water rising in defiance of gravity to form a spinning column. Naruto dropped into a defensive stance, chakra flaring golden as he prepared for whatever emerged. The water column twisted, freezing into crystalline structures that shattered and reformed, creating patterns similar to the markings on his arms. "Kurama, you recognize this?" Naruto whispered. "No, but it recognizes you," the fox growled back. The water exploded out, ward as reality itself seemed to tear open. A vertical slash of absolute darkness appeared, edges rippling with iridescent energy. From within this dimensional rift stepped three figures that defied conventional description. Their bodies appeared humanoid but composed of overlapping plates resembling armor or exoskeletons. Where faces should be, they possessed only smooth, reflective surfaces that distorted like mercury. They moved with unnatural grace, limbs bending at impossible angles as they oriented toward Naruto. "Vessel located," one spoke, its voice a harmonic vibration rather than sound. "Awakening incomplete. Optimal extraction conditions present. The Emperor must not rise," another responded. "Extract the essence. Discard the shell." Naruto didn't wait for further explanation. Four shadow clones materialized around him in bursts of smoke, each charging forward with a Rasengan forming. The entities moved with perfect coordination, phasing through the clones, attacks as though insubstantial. One extended its arm, which elongated and sharpened into a spear-like appendage. It pierced a clone, dissipating it instantly. Physical composition. Energy-based. Threat assessment. Moderate. The third entity observed. Proceed with extraction. Naruto leapt backward, hands flying through seals. Wind style. Vacuum bullets. Compressed air projectiles ripped toward the entities. Powerful enough to shred through steel. The attacks connected, shearing through their forms, only for the creatures to reform, mercury-like surfaces rippling before solidifying again. "What the hell are you?" Naruto demanded, already gathering natural energy to enter Sage mode. "We are Void Harvesters," the first responded. "You contain what is not yours. The Dragon Emperor's essence must return to the Void." Dragon Emperor. Naruto's confusion momentarily distracted him. "Look, I don't know what you're talking about, but you picked the wrong shinobi to mess with." Golden chakra enveloped him as he accessed Kurama's power, the familiar warmth surging through his coils. But something interfered. The markings on his arms flared painfully, sending conflicting energy patterns through his system. The golden chakra flickered and destabilized. "The essence awakens," one harvester observed. "Priority upgrade. Immediate extraction." They converged simultaneously, surrounding Naruto in a triangular formation. Their limbs transformed into cable-like appendages that shot forward, wrapping around his arms and neck. Where they touched, intense cold burned like frostbite. "Release the vessel," they intoned in unison. Beginning to pull, Naruto felt something beyond physical pain, as though they were attempting to separate his very soul from his body. The markings on his arms blazed with blinding light, spreading rapidly across his chest and back in intricate, interlocking patterns. His vision blurred, consciousness threatening to slip away as the harvesters continued their extraction. "Enough!" Kurama roared within him, flooding Naruto's system with raw chakra. The competing energies, Kurama's, the harvesters, and whatever power the markings contained, created a catastrophic reaction. A shockwave exploded outward, sending the harvesters tumbling backward. The dimensional rift they had emerged from widened, its edges becoming unstable. "Vessel resistance unexpected," one harvester stated, its mercury face rippling with what might have been concern. "Resonance pattern suggests secondary awakening imminent." "Abort extraction," another decided. "Summon elimination squad." Before they could act, the rift pulsed and changed color, shifting from absolute black to a swirling crimson vortex. The harvesters turned toward it, postures suggesting alarm. "Interference detected. Priority override. Retreat and..." A massive clawed hand erupted from the vortex, easily 15 feet across and covered in scales that shifted between deep crimson and burnished gold. It closed around one harvester, crushing it instantly into dissolving motes of light. The remaining two scattered, attempting to flee, but a second hand emerged, followed by a head that defied comprehension. Naruto, struggling to maintain consciousness, beheld a dragon unlike any creature in shinobi legends. Its head alone dwarfed the Hokage monument, crowned with 5 horns that resembled crystallized lightning. Eyes like molten gold fixed on him with ancient intelligence and unmistakable fury. Miserable parasites, the dragon's voice resonated not through the air but directly within Naruto's mind. You dare attempt to harvest my essence. The remaining harvesters launched themselves at the dragon, transforming their limbs into lances of void energy. They penetrated the dragon's scales, drawing a roar that shook the very foundation of the valley. Massive stone fragments broke free from the statues, crashing into the lake below. Your resistance is mathematical certainty, one harvester communicated. The Emperor falls in all timelines. The dragon's laughter held no humor, only ancient contempt. You calculate based on limited variables. Her jaws opened wide, revealing teeth longer than trees. And from her throat gathered energy that distorted the air itself. I am Tiamat, first of the 5 dragons, mother of chaos and creation. Your equations are flawed. A beam of concentrated destruction erupted from her maw, instantly vaporizing one harvester. The final entity attempted to escape through another rift it was generating, but Tiamat's tail, vast and segmented like an armored whip, lashed forward, impaling it. The void does not forget, the harvester communicated as it dissolved. The Emperor cannot maintain balance. We are inevitable. Silence descended upon the valley as the entity disappeared. Naruto, barely standing, found himself alone facing a creature of impossible proportions. The dragon's massive form remained partially within the crimson portal, only her head, shoulders, and forelegs extending into the physical world. So, Tiamat's voice resonated within Naruto's mind again, her massive head lowering to examine him like a curious insect. This is the vessel my essence chose. A human child from a backwater dimension. Naruto, despite his situation, felt a flash of indignation. Hey, who are you calling a child? And what's this about being a vessel? I'm nobody's container but Kurama's, and that's a partnership. His defiance seemed to amuse the dragon, whose scales rippled with changing light. It speaks with unearned confidence. Interesting. I'll show you interesting. Naruto muttered, attempting to gather chakra despite his exhaustion. The markings on his skin burned in response, but instead of hampering his efforts as before, they seemed to synchronize with his intent. Tiamat's enormous eyes narrowed. Impossible. You cannot possibly access the imperial flames yet. Your awakening is incomplete. But golden-orange fur had begun swirling around Naruto's hands, distinct from his usual chakra. It didn't burn his skin but emanated from it, as though he himself were the source. The sensation was foreign yet strangely familiar. Like remembering a dream long forgotten. What's happening to me? Naruto demanded, staring at his flame-wreathed hands. Tiamat reared back, genuine surprise evident in her ancient eyes. You truly don't know. Her massive head tilted, studying him with new interest. The essence chose you, yet left you ignorant. How cruel. A rumbling sound like continental plates shifting might have been her version of laughter. I'm getting really tired of cryptic answers, Naruto said, the flames intensifying with his frustration. First those harvester things, now you, what's this dragon emperor business? And why are these markings appearing on my body? Those markings are the imperial scales, Tiamat replied. They appear when the essence of the dragon emperor awakens in a new vessel. You, human, have somehow been chosen as the next emperor, a position of cosmic significance you cannot possibly comprehend. Try me, Naruto challenged. I've dealt with gods before. Gods. Tiamat's derision was palpable. Your world's deities are but fragments of true cosmic forces. The Dragon Emperor stands above gods, maintaining balance across the multiverse itself. Where there is creation, there must be destruction. Where there is order, there must be chaos. The Emperor ensures neither force dominates. The flames around Naruto's hands spread further, enveloping his arms. Strange symbols appeared within the fire. Rotating slowly, ancient writing in no language he recognized. And you think that's me? There's gotta be some mistake. That, Tiamat agreed, was precisely my first thought. Yet here we are. The essence recognized you, and now the void harvesters have found you. They serve entropic forces that seek total dissolution of reality. If they extract the Emperor's essence before your awakening completes, all worlds suffer. Naruto absorbed this, mind racing. These harvesters, they'll come back. With greater numbers and power, Tiamat confirmed. This world cannot withstand them. Your friends cannot protect you. Only I can guide you to complete your awakening and claim your imperial powers. The implication was clear. You want me to leave. Abandon Konoha. If you stay, everything you love will be destroyed, Tiamat stated matter-of-factly. The harvesters care nothing for collateral damage. They will reduce this entire dimension to void energy to prevent another emperor from rising. Naruto's flames flickered with his emotional turmoil. After everything, the war, the sacrifices, finally achieving peace, to be faced with abandoning it all. There has to be another way, he insisted. Maybe if I explained this to Kakashi and the others. Your primitive weapons and energy manipulation cannot harm void harvesters, Tiamat interrupted. Only imperial flame truly destroys them. Without complete awakening, you manage to generate only enough to interest me. It will not repel a full invasion force. A distant explosion rocked the valley. Naruto and Tiamat turned toward the source, a second rift opening several miles away, larger than the first. They return already, Tiamat observed. Your decision time has expired, human. Naruto's mind raced through options. If what this dragon said was true, staying meant endangering everyone. Leaving meant stepping into complete unknown with a clearly temperamental dragon deity who barely concealed her disdain for him. Another explosion, closer now. Through the trees, Naruto glimpsed metallic forms advancing. Dozens of harvesters, varied in size and configuration but all bearing the same reflective, featureless faces. Fine, he decided, turning back to Tiamat. I'll go with you, but first I need to warn my friends, let them know what's happening. Tiamat's massive tail lashed impatiently. There is no time for sentiment. The dimensional corridor stabilizes only briefly. 3 minutes, Naruto insisted, already creating a shadow clone. That's all I need. Without waiting for her response, he instructed the clone to find Kakashi and explain the situation. The clone nodded and darted away, channeling chakra for maximum speed. Tiamat watched this with evident disapproval. Your attachment to these mortals is a weakness the previous emperor would never have tolerated. Yeah, well, I'm not the previous emperor, Naruto retorted. My precious people are my strength, not my weakness. If being this dragon emperor means abandoning that belief, you picked the wrong guy. Rather than anger, his defiance seemed to spark curiosity in the ancient dragon. Truly fascinating. Perhaps this is why the essence chose you, an emperor who values connection rather than mere power. She lowered her massive head. Come then, Naruto Uzumaki. We have much to discuss, and little time before the multiverse notices your awakening. The approaching harvesters had spotted them, accelerating their advance. Tiamat's portal pulsed, widening to accommodate Naruto's passage. He began, but Tiamat's tail wrapped around him with surprising gentleness, lifting him toward the crimson vortex. Close your eyes, human. The first journey between dimensions can shatter unprepared minds. Naruto caught a final glimpse of the Valley of End as Tiamat pulled him into the portal. The world seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously, colors inverting and reality folding in impossible geometries. His consciousness struggled to interpret sensations never meant for human perception. Through this chaos, one constant remained, the imperial scales spreading across his body, now covering his chest, back, and climbing toward his face. They pulsed with warm reassurance, as though welcoming him home to something he'd never known he'd lost. Then darkness claimed him, bearing him away from the only world he'd ever known. Consciousness returned in fragments. Naruto became aware of warmth first, then the sensation of breathing air that felt somehow richer, more substantial than he was accustomed to. His eyes opened to a landscape that defied comprehension. The sky above, if it could be called a sky, swirled with colors that shouldn't exist, bleeding into one another in hypnotic patterns. Multiple suns hung at different positions, each a distinct color and size. The ground beneath him wasn't earth but something crystalline and semi-translucent, revealing shadowy shapes moving deep below. "Welcome to the Celestial Nexus," came Tiamat's voice, no longer the mountain-shaking rumble from before but something closer to human scale. Naruto turned to find not the colossal dragon but a woman standing several paces away. Tall and regal, with skin like polished bronze and hair that shifted between crimson and gold like living flame. Her eyes remained the same molten gold, and small scales adorned her temples and the backs of her hands. Her attire resembled armor made from interlocking scales, somehow both formidable and elegant. "You're smaller," Naruto observed intelligently. A smile that contained no warmth curved her lips. "This form is less taxing to maintain in the Nexus, and more conducive to instruction." She gestured to their surroundings. "We stand at the crossroads of realities. Human. Every point of light you see is a universe, a dimension, a plane of existence." Naruto looked more carefully at what he had taken for stars. The sky was filled with countless luminous spheres, some tiny as pinpricks, others large as moons. They pulsed with their own rhythms, connected by filaments of light that formed a vast cosmic web. Each world has its own rules, its own physics, its own concept of time and space, Tiamat continued. "Some are ruled by what you call chakra, others by different energy systems, magic, ki, cosmic forces beyond your current understanding. And the Dragon Emperor maintains balance between them all." Naruto asked, struggling to grasp the scale. "Between and within," Tiamat corrected. "When forces of creation grow too powerful, destruction must rise to counter it. When destruction threatens to consume all, creation must be nurtured. This is the cosmic law that transcends all others." Naruto's hand rose unconsciously to touch the scales now covering most of his torso. "Why me? I'm just a shinobi from Konoha." Tiamat circled him slowly, assessing. "That question has occupied my thoughts since I sensed your awakening. You're not the typical vessel. Previous emperors were chosen from races with inherent connection to draconic lineage. Humans rarely qualify. Your lives are too brief, your understanding too limited." "Gee, thanks," Naruto muttered. "Yet," she continued as if he hadn't spoken, "you contain multitudes. I sense the Kyuubi's energy intertwined with yours, unusual but not unprecedented. More significant is the sage's blessing that permeates your chakra network." "Hagoromo," Naruto confirmed. "He gave me his power during the war." Tiamat's eyebrows rose. "Hagoromo, the rabbit goddess's spawn," she laughed, a sound like distant thunder. "How deliciously ironic. That family always did meddle in affairs beyond their understanding." "You knew the Sage of Six Paths?" Naruto asked, incredulous. "I have lived countless eons, child. I knew the entity you called Kaguya before she ever set foot on your world. A minor celestial playing at godhood." Tiamat waved dismissively. Quote, "Her connection to your selection is tangential at best. More relevant is what you personally embody." She stopped directly before him, eyes narrowing as though peering into his soul. "You have experienced the extremes of existence. Haven't you? Deepest despair and highest joy. Purest hatred and most selfless love. You've touched death yet chosen life repeatedly." Naruto remained silent, unnerved by her accuracy. "Most importantly," Tiamat continued, "you understand the necessity of both destruction and creation. You've destroyed to protect and created new possibilities from the ashes of old systems. You don't merely tolerate contradiction, you embody it." Her hand rose, hovering near his chest without touching. "The imperial essence seeks balance in all things. You, Naruto Uzumaki, are a walking paradox of balanced extremes." Quote, before Naruto could respond, pain lanced through him, sharp and sudden, radiating from the scales. He doubled over, gasping. "Ah," Tiamat noted clinically. "The final phase begins, earlier than expected." "What?" Naruto gritted through clenched teeth, "is happening?" "The essence fully integrates with your chakra network, rewriting certain aspects of biology to accommodate imperial abilities." She stepped back, observing with scientific detachment. "Many potential vessels die at this stage. Their bodies reject the transformation. Now you tell me," Naruto growled, dropping to one knee as the pain intensified. The scales spread rapidly now, covering his entire torso and climbing up his neck. Where they touched, his skin burned like molten metal had been poured over it. Would foreknowledge have changed your decision? Tiamat asked, genuinely curious. Despite his agony, Naruto managed a defiant grin. No, but a little warning would have been nice. Inside his mindscape, Kurama stirred anxiously. Kit, something's happening to your chakra network. It's expanding somehow. Naruto could feel it. New pathways forming, existing ones widening to accommodate energies never meant for human circulation. The pain peaked as the scales reached his face, covering his whisker marks and continuing upward. Fight through it, Tiamat instructed, her voice distant through the haze of pain. Your will must dominate the essence, not merely contain it. Previous emperors commanded the power. If you merely host it, you will eventually be consumed. Naruto had experience with internal struggles for control. Drawing on years of working with Kurama, he focused inward, not fighting the transformation but guiding it, imposing his will on the chaotic energy. I accept your power, he communicated to the essence, but on my terms. I am Naruto Uzumaki. I won't be erased or controlled. The response came not in words but in sensation, acknowledgement, assessment, and finally, acceptance. The pain receded gradually, replaced by a humming energy that settled into his newly transformed body. Naruto stood slowly, feeling simultaneously heavier and lighter. The scales had covered him completely, yet rather than encumbering him, they felt like a second skin, flexible, responsive, and thrumming with power. Tiamat watched him with new respect in her ancient eyes. Impressive. Most vessels require days to achieve equilibrium. You managed it in minutes. I've had practice, Naruto replied, examining his transformed arms. The scales shimmered with subtle iridescence, predominantly golden but shifting to orange and crimson as he moved. So what now? You mentioned instruction. Now we determine if you can access the imperial abilities without destroying yourself. Tiamat gestured, and the crystalline ground beneath them rose, forming a circular platform that lifted them higher into the multicolored void. The first test is simple. Manifest the flame. Like I did before, Naruto concentrated, remembering the sensation in the Valley of End. Golden fire flickered around his hands, but sputtered uncertainly. No, that was instinctive, defensive. True imperial flame responds to focused will. Tiamat circled behind him. The flame isn't merely fire. It's concentrated reality, the power to impose your will upon existence itself. Naruto closed his eyes, seeking that connection. What exactly am I looking for? The place where your consciousness meets the multiverse, Tiamat replied enigmatically. Where you end and ever. Why thing else begins, then push beyond that boundary. That's not exactly helpful, Naruto muttered, but he continued searching. He'd mastered Sage Mode by finding the connection between himself and natural energy. Perhaps this was similar but on a vaster scale. He extended his awareness outward, past his physical form, past the chakra network, past even the mental space he shared with Kurama. There, at the furthest edge of his perception, he sensed something, a barrier not solid but permeable, separating his individual existence from the greater cosmos. There, he whispered, focusing on that boundary. Rather than drawing energy inward as with Sage Mode, he pushed his consciousness outward, through the barrier. The sensation defied description, like simultaneously touching every point in existence while remaining centered in his body. Through this connection, he felt the imperial essence respond, channeling cosmic energy back through the connection he'd established. Naruto opened his eyes to find both arms wreathed in golden flame that burned without consuming. Unlike before, it didn't flicker uncertainly but maintained steady, controlled brilliance. I did it, he breathed. What? Ching as the flames responded to his thoughts, extending or retracting as he willed. Tiamat's expression remained neutral, but something like approval flickered in her ancient eyes. A promising start. The flame is the foundation of all imperial abilities. From it you'll learn to create, destroy, transform, and transcend. Transcend what? Naruto asked, maintaining the flame with growing confidence. Physical limitations, dimensional boundaries, eventually, the very concepts of time and space. She gestured toward the distant lights. As emperor, you must be able to travel between realms at will, maintaining your corporeal form in environments that would annihilate ordinary beings. Naruto extinguished the flame with a thought, processing this information. How many emperors came before me? 12, Tiamat answered. each reigning for approximately 10,000 of your years before passing the essence to a successor. The number staggered him. 10,000 years. But humans don't live nearly that long. The essence extends lifespans considerably. The shortest-lived emperor reigned for 8,000 years. The longest, nearly 15,000. Naruto sat heavily on the crystalline platform, mind reeling. I'd outlive everyone I've ever known. Everyone I'll ever know. Tiamat tilted her head, studying his reaction with clinical interest. This distresses you. Most vessels consider immortality the greatest benefit of ascension. That's not living, Naruto argued. Watching everyone you care about grow old and die, over and over for thousands of years. That's torture. Attachment to mortals is inefficient, Tiamat stated. Previous emperors maintained relationships primarily with eternal beings, dragons, cosmic entities, primordial forces given form. Like you? Naruto asked, studying her more carefully. Something crossed Tiamat's expression too quickly to interpret. I am first dragon, born when the multiverse was young. I serve the Emperor as advisor and enforcer when necessary. Serve. Naruto caught the term. But you seem so powerful in your own right. Even I must bow to cosmic necessity, she replied, a hint of old bitterness edging her voice. The Emperor maintains balance. Without balance, even beings like myself would eventually succumb to entropic forces. Before Naruto could pursue this line of questioning, the nexus around them trembled. Colors in the void shifted abruptly, several of the distant lights flickering as though troubled. Tiamat turned sharply, scanning the cosmos. Disturbance in the nearby realms. The void. Harvesters move more quickly than anticipated. They can reach us here. Naruto stood, instantly alert. Not directly. The nexus exists between realities, protected by barriers they cannot easily breach. Her expression darkened. But they can attack dimensions connected to your original world, creating chain reactions that eventually threaten your home. Then we have to stop them, Naruto stated. Determination hardening his features. How do we fight these things? Tiamat's lips curved in what might have been a smile. Eager for battle already. Perhaps you're more suited to this role than I initially believed. She raised her hand, and reality before them rippled, forming a window-like opening that showed another world. Unlike the technological simplicity of the shinobi world, His dimension contains soaring towers of glass and steel, vehicles moving without horses or visible propulsion, and skies filled with flying machines. And descending upon this civilization were dozens of rifts similar to those that had opened in the Valley of End. This is happening now, Naruto asked, watching void harvesters pour through the rifts, their mercury-like bodies shifting into more monstrous forms as they attacked. Yes, this dimension exists adjacent to yours in the cosmic web. They target connected worlds, working inward toward your origin point. Tiamat gestured, and the viewing portal expanded. Observe their methodology. They harvest life energy, converting it to void essence which strengthens their connection to entropic forces. Naruto watched in horror as the harvesters moved through the city, touching humans who then collapsed into desiccated husks, their life force visibly absorbed as luminous energy. Those people are dying while we just watch, he protested, anger building. The imperial scales responded to his emotion, glowing brighter. Intervention requires preparation, Tiamat cautioned. You've barely awakened. Dimensional travel taxes even experienced vessels. You could lose corporeal coherence without proper training. I don't care, Naruto insisted. I never abandon people who need help. That's my ninja way, and becoming this emperor thing doesn't change that. Tiamat studied him, head tilted in that bird-like manner. You truly believe you can defeat void harvesters in your current state? I don't know, Naruto admitted. But I know I have to try. The golden flame manifested around his hands again, stronger this time, responding to his resolve. Besides, you said I need practice. What better practice than actual combat? Su. ND rumbled from Tiamat's chest that might have been laughter or merely contemplation. Your predecessors spent decades in preparation before their first interdimensional conflict. Yeah, well, they weren't Naruto Uzumaki. He stepped toward the viewing portal. Are you coming, or do I figure this out myself? For the first time, genuine amusement crossed Tiamat's ageless features. Perhaps the essence chose more wisely than I thought. She approached, her humanoid form shimmering as scales emerged more prominently across her skin. Very well, Emperor. Let us see what you're capable of. Shish. E grasped his shoulder with surprising strength. Remember, maintain your connection to the Imperial essence at all times. It anchors your existence across dimensional boundaries. Lose that connection, and you'll dissolve into component atoms. That sounds unpleasant, Naruto commented, steeling himself. Terminal, Tiamat corrected. Focus on your destination. Visualize it clearly. The essence will guide your transition. Naruto concentrated on the city they'd observed, fixing it in his mind. The Imperial scales responded, warmth spreading throughout his body as they glowed brighter. The sensation of connection he'd experienced earlier expanded, as though reality itself bent around him. Now step forward, Tiamat instructed, and impose your will upon the void. Naruto moved toward the viewing portal, which rippled like water as he approached. Rather than passing through it, he felt reality fold around him, compressing infinite distance into a single step. Vertigo seized him, as sensory information overwhelmed his consciousness. Smells, sounds, and sensations from thousands of potential realities crashed against his awareness simultaneously. Through this chaos, he clung to the image of the city, refusing to be diverted. When reality reasserted itself, Naruto stood in the midst of destruction. The city around him lay partially in ruins, smoke rising from multiple buildings. Civilians ran screaming as void harvesters moved methodically through the streets, harvesting life energy with terrible efficiency. Successful transition, Tiamat noted, materializing beside him. Her humanoid form had grown larger, now nearly 8 feet tall, with scales covering most of her visible skin. Impressive for your first crossing. Naruto barely heard her, focused on the nearest harvester cornering a group of children against a collapsed wall. Without hesitation, he charged, Imperial flame wreathing both arms as he launched himself forward. Hey, Mercury face, he shouted. Pick on someone who can fight back. The harvester turned, its featureless face rippling with what might have been surprise. Anomaly detected. The vessel approaches without full awakening. Opportunity. Optimal. It abandoned the children, limbs elongating into blade-like appendages as it rushed toward Naruto. He met its charge head-on, ducking beneath a slashing attack and driving his flame-covered fist directly into its torso. Unlike his previous encounter, where conventional attacks had proven ineffective, the Imperial flame burned through the harvester's form like paper, creating a gaping hole that refused to regenerate. The creature emitted a harmonic screech, attempting to retreat, but Naruto pressed forward. Not so tough against someone who can actually hurt you, huh? He formed a Rasengan in his right hand. But unlike the familiar blue spiraling sphere, this one blazed with golden fire. Try this on for size. The Imperial Rasengan struck the harvester's face, detonating with exponentially more force than Naruto had anticipated. The explosion vaporized the creature entirely and continued outward, demolishing half a city block. Naruto stared in shock at the destruction. That was more than I expected. Imperial energies amplify your existing abilities, Tiamat explained, appearing beside him. Adjust accordingly. More harvesters had noticed the explosion, abandoning their harvesting to converge on this new threat. They moved with eerie coordination, dozens flowing together like liquid metal to form a massive amalgamated entity 3 stories tall. This is bad, Naruto muttered, backing up. This is opportunity, Tiamat countered. Her humanoid form shimmered, expanding rapidly as she reverted to her true draconic nature. Towering over the buildings, crimson gold scales gleaming in the city's artificial lights, she roared a challenge that shattered every window for miles. Show me your worth, Emperor. She called down to Naruto. Prove the essence chose correctly. The amalgamated harvester attacked, multiple limbs striking simultaneously. Tiamat met it with primordial ferocity, claws and teeth tearing through its mass while her tail lashed buildings to rubble in the process. Naruto realized they needed to draw the battle away from civilians. Focusing on the Imperial connection, he reached for another ability. The flames responded, coalescing around him in a humanoid construct similar to his Kurama chakra mode but composed of golden fire. Everyone get clear, he shouted to the watching civilians, his voice carrying unexpected authority. Head underground if you can. To his surprise, they obeyed instantly, as though his words carried compulsion. No time to contemplate that now. The harvester had noticed his transformation and directed a portion of its mass toward him while continuing to battle Tiamat. Naruto leapt upward, his flame construct giving him enhanced strength and speed. He landed on a skyscraper, using it as a vantage point to assess the situation. Dozens more harvesters continued harvesting throughout the city. The rifts they'd entered through remained open, pulsing with void energy. The rifts, he realized. They're the connection point. Focusing his awareness, he extended his senses toward the nearest rift, probing its structure. Unlike natural phenomena, these were constructed, artificial tiers. In reality maintained by specific energy patterns. Kurama, he communicated inwardly. You sensing this? Yeah, Kit, the fox responded. Those portals are like inverse summoning techniques, but on a cosmic scale. Disrupt the anchor points and they should collapse. Naruto grinned. Even in another dimension facing alien threats, having his partner's insights proved invaluable. He studied the nearest rift, identifying 5 points where void energy concentrated to maintain the tier. The amalgamated harvester had noticed his attention, a significant portion of its mass separating to intercept him. It flowed up the building's exterior with impossible speed, reshaping into a forest of spear-like appendages. Naruto created a dozen shadow clones, each wrapped in the same golden fire construct. They scattered in different directions, drawing portions of the pursuing mass with them. Meanwhile, the original Naruto focused Imperial Flame into a bow-like construct, forming arrows of concentrated energy. Let's see how precise I can be with this, he muttered, taking aim at the first anchor point. The arrow flew true, striking the void energy nexus. The rift shuddered, its edges destabilizing. 4 more shots followed in rapid succession, each striking a different anchor point. The rift collapsed with a thunderous implosion, pulling several nearby harvesters into its vortex before sealing. The effect rippled outward, disrupting the harvesters' cohesion momentarily. It worked, Naruto shouted. His clones, understanding the strategy, dispersed to target the remaining rifts. He maintained the harvesters' attention. The main mass renewed its attack with increased ferocity, perhaps recognizing the threat to its invasion. Limbs whipped toward Naruto from multiple directions, too many to dodge. Instead, he channeled Imperial Flame into a defensive barrier, creating a sphere of golden energy around himself. The harvester's attack struck the barrier and disintegrated on contact. Void energy and Imperial Flame annihilating each other in flashes of anti-light. Naruto maintained his concentration, expanding the barrier outward to push back the encroaching mass. Across the city, his clones successfully closed 3 more rifts, each collapse sending shockwaves through the Harvester Collective. Tiamat had fully engaged the main body, her massive form tearing through its substance with primeval fury. The final rift is collapsing. A clone's voice reached him moments before it dispersed from sustaining damage. The amalgamated harvester sensed its defeat approaching. In a final desperate move, its entire mass contracted and then exploded outward in all directions, a last attempt at maximum harvesting. Naruto's barrier couldn't expand quickly enough to counter this. Acting on instinct, he dropped the defensive strategy and instead poured all his energy into a counterpulse of Imperial Flame. Golden fire met void essence in a catastrophic reaction that momentarily blanked out reality itself. When visibility returned, the harvesters were gone, leaving only scattered void residue that dissipated like smoke. Naruto descended slowly to street level, flame construct fading as exhaustion set in. Using the Imperial abilities had drained him more thoroughly than any chakra technique he'd ever attempted. Tiamat landed beside him, scales smoldering from contact with void essence. Her form shimmered, contracting back to humanoid size though still towering over him. Impressive adaptation, she noted, examining the devastated city around them. Losing the rifts showed strategic thinking most new vessels lack. The people, Naruto began, looking around at the destruction. Many survived because of your warning, Tiamat replied. More would have perished had we not intervened. This world's defenders were unprepared for dimensional threats. As if summoned by her words, sirens sounded in the distance. Vehicles unlike any Naruto had seen approached rapidly, bearing symbols of authority. We should depart, Tiamat advised. Explaining interdimensional conflict to local authorities rarely ends productively. Naruto nodded reluctantly, still surveying the damage. Can we help rebuild or heal the injured before Your energy is nearly depleted, Tiamat interrupted. Attempt any further exertion and you risk destabilizing your entire awakening process. We must return to the Nexus for your recovery. Before Naruto could protest further, she grasped his shoulder, and reality folded around them once more. The transition felt smoother this time, his consciousness better prepared for the sensory onslaught of crossing dimensional boundaries. They materialized on the same crystalline platform in the celestial nexus. The moment they arrived, Naruto's legs gave out, exhaustion overwhelming him. He collapsed to his knees, the imperial scales dimming as his energy reserves approached critical levels. You overextended, Tiamat observed, though her tone carried less criticism than before, yet accomplished more than expected. Rest now. Your body must integrate the experiences of your first transition. Naruto wanted to respond, to ask more questions about what he'd experienced, but consciousness was already slipping away. As darkness claimed him, one thought remained clear: this was only the beginning of a journey that would change everything he thought he knew about himself and reality itself. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness claimed him was Tiamat's expression, no longer contemptuous but evaluating, reassessing, perhaps even approving. Then nothing but dreamless void, ironically similar to what they had just fought against. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Dimensions Apart. Dreams of golden fire and end. Less falling accompanied Naruto's unconsciousness. He floated through visions of worlds he'd never seen, oceans that stretched to infinity, cities that defied physics by spiraling upward into crimson skies. Forests where the trees pulsed with conscious thought. Through each landscape, serpentine shadows moved with purpose, massive draconic forms maintaining order in realms beyond human comprehension. Are these memories, he wondered within the dream, or something else? Neither and both, answered a voice like distant thunder. The essence shares what you need to understand. Naruto turned within the dreamscape to find himself facing not Tiamat, but a dragon of midnight blue scales and eyes that contained swirling galaxies. Unlike Tiamat's aggressive presence, this being radiated serene contemplation. Who are you? Naruto asked. The dragon's mouth didn't move, yet words formed in Naruto's mind. I was the 9th emperor. My name would mean nothing to you. Language fails across such distances of time and dimension. You may call me Azure. You're inside me. Like Kurama. Gentle amusement rippled through the dreamscape. Not precisely. When an emperor passes, aspects of Th.I.R. consciousness merge with the imperial essence. I am memory, experience, wisdom, but no longer truly sentient. Your mind shapes this interaction. So I'm basically talking to myself. If that's amplification helps you accept what's happening, yes. Naruto studied his surroundings as they shifted to a crystalline chamber suspended in void, perhaps Azure's throne room during his reign. Why are you showing me all this? These worlds, these memories. Because you resist the conventional path. Azure's form coiled around the chamber's perimeter. Most vessels spend centuries in preparation before assuming their duties. You have thrust yourself directly into conflict. There wasn't exactly time for the scenic route, Naruto countered. Those harvester things were attacking innocent people. Precisely. Something like approval colored Azure's tone. Your predecessor would have observed, calculated, planned, and by then, that dimension would have fallen. Your instinctive compassion is unusual among emperors. Is that a problem? It is a change. The multiverse adapts poorly to change, yet occasionally requires it for continued existence. The dragon's galaxy eyes fixed on Naruto. The void grows stronger with each cycle. Previous methods may no longer suffice. Before Naruto could respond, pain lanced through his consciousness. The dreamscape shattered like glass, Azure's form dissolving into mist. Your physical form requires attention, the fading voice noted. We will speak again when you're ready for more. Reality reasserted itself with jarring abruptness. Naruto awoke gasping, clutching at his chest where molten agony pulsed through the imperial scales. He found himself lying on a translucent surface that shifted between solid and liquid beneath his touch. The pain passes, came Tiamat's voice from nearby. Your cellular structure continues adapting to the imperial essence. Naruto focused through watering eyes to find her seated cross-legged several meters away. Watching him with clinical interest, She had reverted to her more humanoid appearance, though her skin retained a metallic bronze sheen, and her eyes remained inhuman pools of molten gold. How long was I out? He managed through gritted teeth. Time lacks meaning in the Nexus, she replied. By your perception, perhaps 3 days. By cosmic standards, an eye blink. The pain gradually subsided to a manageable throb. Naruto pushed himself upright, noting the imperial scales had spread further, now covering even his fingertips with their golden-orange pattern. I had dreams, he said. About previous emperors. Not dreams. Memory integration. Tiamat rose in a fluid motion that seemed to defy gravity. The essence contains fragments of your predecessor's experiences. Useful knowledge, if you can access it properly. Naruto flexed his fingers, watching the scales shimmer as they caught the ambient light. I met someone called Azure. The 9th Emperor. For the first time, Tiamat appeared genuinely surprised. Interesting. Most vessels connect first with their immediate predecessor. She approached, studying him with increased intensity. Azure was unconventional. He sought balance through prevention rather than correction. His methods were considered inefficient by the cosmic hierarchies. But effective? Naruto asked. A sound like distant thunder rumbled in Tiamat's chest, her version of a contemplative hum. For his era, perhaps. He maintained stability for nearly 11,000 years. She circled Naruto slowly. That his aspect reached you first suggests alignment with your natural inclinations. Naruto stood carefully, testing his balance. The imperial scales felt lighter than before, more integrated with his movement. So what happens now? More training. You demonstrated surprising aptitude in combat, Tiamat acknowledged. However, your understanding of cosmic structures remains rudimentary. Before further field application, you require fundamental knowledge. She gestured, and the crystalline surface beneath them rippled, forming a raised dais. At its center appeared a 3-dimensional model of interconnected spheres, see. Countless worlds linked by threads of energy. The multiverse exists as a complex web of dimensional planes, Tiamat explained, her tone shifting to something almost professorial. Each sphere represents a discrete reality with its own physical laws, temporal flow, and energy systems. Naruto approached the model, fascinated despite himself. One sphere pulsed with familiar energy. That's my world. The shinobi lands. Yes, a relatively young dimension, still establishing its cosmic resonance. Tiamat's finger indicated the threads connecting it to neighboring spheres. These are dimensional boundaries, places where realities occasionally bleed into one another. And that's how the harvesters travel between worlds. Through these boundaries, they force ruptures rather than using natural passages, Tiamat corrected. Destructive and inefficient, but effective for their purposes. Naruto studied the model more carefully, noticing patterns in how the worlds connected. Some clusters formed tight-knit groups while others floated in relative isolation. As Emperor, Tiamat continued, you must learn to navigate these connections naturally, without destabilizing the dimensional boundaries. Each transition affects the broader cosmic web. Like ripples in a pond, Naruto mused, remembering Jiraiya's lessons about chakra networks. Tiamat tilted her head, evaluating his comprehension. A simplification, but functionally accurate. Your first transition was crude, effective but disruptive. Proper technique requires precision. She waved a hand through the model, causing it to zoom in on a particular cluster of spheres. One pulsed with distressed energy, its connecting threads fluctuating erratically. While you recovered, I monitored dimensional disturbances. This reality experiences unusual temporal fluctuations, signs of void contamination following a recent harvester incursion. Naruto focused on the troubled sphere. More attacks. We need to help them. Not precisely an attack, Tiamat corrected. Rather, aftermath. The dimension suffers degradation from exposure to void energies. Left unchecked, the corruption will spread to connected realities. Then let's go. Naruto straightened, determination replacing fatigue. I'm recovered enough. Tiamat's expression might have contained a flicker of approval, though it vanished too quickly to be certain. Your recovery is adequate, but this mission requires subtlety, not combat. Observation and energy manipulation rather than direct confrontation. I can do subtle, Naruto insisted, receiving a skeptical look in return. What? I was trained by the best infiltration specialists in my world. We shall see. Tiamat dismissed the model with a gesture. This dimension operates under different physical laws than your native realm. Energy manifests as what locals term ki, similar to chakra but less structured, more directly connected to life force. Naruto absorbed this information, mentally cataloging the differences she described. Will my abilities still work there? The imperial essence transcends dimensional limitations, she confirmed. However, how it manifests may vary based on local conditions. Adaptation will be necessary. She approached him, golden eyes evaluating his condition. Your physical form has stabilized sufficiently for transition. Remember the techniques I showed you previously. Focus on destination. Maintain connection to the essence, impose will upon void. Naruto nodded, centering himself. The imperial scales warmed in response to his concentration, golden light pulsing beneath the geometric patterns. He visualized the troubled dimension from the model, reaching through the cosmic web to establish connection. Unlike his first chaotic transition, this he maintained awareness throughout the process. Reality folded around him like origami, compressing infinite distance into a single step. The sensation remained disorienting but no longer threatened to overwhelm his consciousness. Light, sound, and sensation reasserted themselves gradually. Naruto found himself standing on a small rocky outcropping overlooking a vast landscape of twisted rock formations and red sky. Multiple moons of varying sizes hung on the horizon, creating a surreal tableau unlike anything in his home dimension. This is, he began, absorbing the alien environment. Planet Zenith, a training ground dimension frequently utilized by divine entities, Tiamat supplied, materializing beside him. She had assumed a more compact form, still taller than Naruto but less imposing than her usual manifestation. Her clothing had changed to match the local aesthetic, resembling fitted armor with geometric patterns that complemented her scales. Divine entities, Naruto questioned, scanning their surroundings. This dimension operates under hierarchical cosmic management, Tiamat explained. Gods of destruction maintain balance through controlled elimination of developmental failures. Creation deities establish new celestial bodies and life systems. Angels observe and enforce cosmic law. Naruto blinked, processing this information. So this dimension has actual gods who just walk around and do jobs. A functional approximation, Tiamat conceded. Their perspective differs from your human understanding of divinity. They are cosmic functionaries more than objects of worship. Before Naruto could inquire further, his enhanced senses detected a disturbance in the atmosphere. The air several hundred meters away shimmered, reality bending as something moved at speeds beyond normal perception. We are noticed, Tiamat observed calmly. Expected, but sooner than anticipated. The distortion resolved into a figure hovering effortlessly above the rocky terrain. Female in appearance, with pale blue skin and white hair styled in an elaborate updo. She carried a long staff topped with a floating sphere and wore elegant robes that seemed impractical or the harsh environment yet remained pristine. She approached at measured pace, stopping at a respectful distance. Her eyes, purple irises within black sclera, studied them with clinical precision. Tiamat, she acknowledged with a slight inclination of her head. Your presence here is unexpected. The dragon courts rarely involve themselves in Universe 7 affairs. Circumstances evolve, Vados, Tiamat replied. Void incursions increase across the dimensional spectrum. Your sector shows contamination. The woman, Vados, turned her attention to Naruto, studying him with heightened interest. And this would be the anomaly our instruments detected. A new vessel, after only 8,000 years. Curious timing. Naruto met her evaluating gaze directly. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, from the shinobi dimension. And yeah, apparently I'm the new Dragon Emperor, though I'm still figuring out what that means exactly. Vados's expression betrayed nothing, but her staff rotated slightly, its orb pulsing with energy. Indeed, your dimensional signature is unusual. Human physiology partially reconfigured by imperial essence, yet retaining original spiritual architecture. I detect secondary energy. Y constructs within your matrix, a Biju consciousness. Naruto blinked, surprised by her perceptiveness. Yeah, Kurama, the Nine Tails. We're partners. Fascinating, Vados murmured, circling him slowly. Most imperial vessels purge secondary consciousnesses during transformation. You've maintained integration instead. She glanced at Tiamat, Unconventional choice. The essence chose, not I, Tiamat responded. A hint of defensiveness coloring her tone. Circumstances required expedited awakening. Yes, the void activity has been concerning. Vados tapped her staff once against the ground, creating a ripple of energy that expanded outward. Though why bring an untrained vessel to an active containment zone? The temporal distortions here require delicate management. Practical experience accelerates development, Tiamat replied. Theory without application produces ineffective emperors. Naruto followed this exchange with growing irritation. Hey, I'm standing right here. If you've got concerns about my abilities, talk to me directly. Both ancient beings turned to him with expressions of mild surprise, as though they'd forgotten he could speak for himself. Vados recovered first, her lips curving in what might have been amusement. Direct indeed, she observed. Very well, Naruto Uzumaki. What do you understand about temporal distortion management? Honestly, nothing specific, he admitted. But I learn fast, especially hands-on. If something's wrong with this dimension, show me. I'll figure out how to help. Vados exchanged a look with Tiamat that contained volumes of unspoken communication. After a moment, she nodded slightly. Come then, she said, tapping her staff twice. Reality around them blurred as she transported all three instantaneously to a new location. They now stood on a plateau overlooking a vast depression in the planet's surface. Within this basin, reality itself appeared unstable. Objects phased in and out of existence, some moving backward through time while others accelerated forward. At the center, a pulsing rift leaked corrosive black energy that seemed to eat away at the fabric of space-time itself. 3 days ago, by local time perception, a void harvester incursion breached this sector, Vados explained. Our local deity of destruction eliminated most invaders, but not before they established this temporal wound. Naruto studied the phenomenon, the imperial scales responding to the void energy with warning warmth. It's spreading. Gradually, Vados confirmed. Standard healing protocols have proven ineffective. The corruption adapts to our techniques, suggesting intelligence behind the initial breach. Targeted attack rather than opportunistic harvesting, Tiamat concluded grimly. The void grows more strategic. Naruto approached the edge of the plateau, enhancing his senses with the imperial essence. The distortion followed patterns, not random corruption but something almost programmed. It's like a virus, he observed, watching the way the void energy replicated its pattern across the affected area. It's not just destroying, it's converting the local reality to match whatever exists in the void. Both Vados and Tiamat turned to him with renewed interest. An apt observation, Vados acknowledged. How would you address such a phenomenon, Emperor? Naruto considered, drawing on his experiences with sealing techniques and chakra contamination. When something invades a system, you have 3 options: remove it completely, neutralize it, or repurpose it. He pointed toward the central rift. That's your source. Everything else is just symptoms. But direct attack probably makes it defend itself, right? Vados nodded. Conventional energy bombardment causes accelerated expansion. Even my brother Whis' temporal reversal techniques proved counterproductive. Then we need to work with the system, not against it. Naruto closed his eyes, extending his awareness toward the distortion. The imperial essence responded, allowing him to perceive the underlying structure of reality itself, a complex lattice of energy, matter, and probability. Within this framework, the void corruption appeared as cancerous growth, rewriting local physical laws to match its native entropy. But it followed rules, perverted, alien rules, but patterns nonetheless. I need to get closer, Naruto decided, opening his eyes. Unadvisable, both Tiamat and Vados stated simultaneously, then glanced at each other in brief surprise. Direct contact with void corruption can destabilize even imperial physiology, Tiamat continued. Your awakening remains incomplete. I'm not planning to touch it, Naruto clarified. But I need a better understanding of how it's spreading. Vados studied him thoughtfully, then tapped her staff. A protective barrier shimmered into existence around them. This will provide limited temporal insulation. Be aware that even observing the phenomenon directly carries risk of cognitive contamination. Quote, thanks for the warning, Naruto replied with a grin that contained equal parts confidence and recklessness. But I've had things try to take over my mind before. They didn't win then either. He stepped through the barrier, immediately feeling the distortion's effects. Time stretched and compressed around him, making movement difficult as his body experienced multiple temporal states simultaneously. The imperial scales flared in response, creating a localized field of stable time. Naruto approached the edge of the corruption zone cautiously. From this proximity, the pattern became clearer. The void energy spread through tiny fractures in reality, using the dimension's own structural weaknesses against it. It's following the path of least resistance. He called back to Vados and Tiamat. Like water finding cracks in a dam. An idea formed, drawing on his experience with nature transformation. If the corruption used the dimension's own structure to spread, perhaps it could be redirected rather than confronted directly. Naruto knelt, placing his palm against the ground just outside the affected area. The imperial scales pulsed, sending golden energy into the planet's surface. He could feel the underlying reality matrix, the fundamental rules governing this dimension. What is he attempting? He heard Vados ask from behind the barrier. Something unorthodox, evidently. Tiamat replied, her tone suggesting this was becoming a pattern. Naruto ignored them, focusing entirely on his task. Rather than attacking the corruption directly, he began reinforcing the surrounding reality matrix, creating new pathways of lesser resistance that led away from vulnerable areas and back toward the central rift. If you can't beat it, let it, he muttered. Remembering Shikamaru's lessons about redirecting enemy forces. Make it fight itself. The imperial essence responded to his intent, golden energy spreading through the ground in intricate patterns. Where it touched, reality stabilized, but rather than forming an impenetrable barrier, it created channels that subtly guided the corruption's flow. For several tense minutes, nothing appeared to change. Then, gradually, the corruption's expansion slowed, then halted, then began to reverse. The void energy followed the paths of least resistance that Naruto had created, spiraling back toward its origin point with increasing velocity. He's creating a self-consuming loop, Vados observed, genuine surprise coloring her normally modulated voice. The corruption feeds on itself rather than the surrounding dimension. Clever, Tiamat acknowledged, though dangerous if the feedback destabilizes the central rift. As if triggered by her concern, the rift at the center of the depression pulsed violently, expanding as the redirected energy flowed back into it. Reality around it warped, threatening to tear completely. That's not good, Naruto muttered, shifting strategies. He stood, hands forming a familiar cross sign. Shadow clone jutsu. 5 perfect copies materialized around him, each already understanding the plan through their shared consciousness. They one themselves at strategic points around the depression, forming a pentagram with the rift at its center. Ready, the original called. Born ready. The clones responded in unison. Each Naruto handled imperial flame through his palms into the ground, creating golden energy lines that connected all 5 points. The pentagram activated, forming a 3-dimensional containment field around the rift. Now compress, the original ordered. The clones pushed inward with their energy, forcing the geometric field to contract. The void rift struggled against the pressure, reality distorting wildly within the shrinking boundary. Naruto gritted his teeth against the strain, the imperial scales burning with effort as he maintained the compression. It's working, one clone shouted as the rift began collapsing inward. Then, without warning, a tendril of pure darkness shot from the rift, piercing through the containment field and straight toward the original Naruto. Watch out, Vados called, her voice distorted by temporal interference. Naruto barely managed to twist aside, but the tendril still grazed his shoulder. Cold beyond imagining seared through him where it touched, the imp. Aerial scales briefly dimming as void energy corrupted his energy network. Enough of this, came Tiamat's voice, suddenly much closer. She had abandoned the safety of the barrier, her form shifting toward her draconic nature. Scales erupted across her skin as she grew taller, more primordial. Tiamat, wait, Vados began, but the first dragon had already moved. With speed defying her increasing mass, Tiamat reached Naruto's side, one clawed hand closing around his wrist. Her touch burned like molten metal, but the pain carried purpose, her energy flowing into him, reinforcing the imperial essence against the void corruption. Complete the compression, she commanded, her voice resonating with power that brooked no disobedience. I will sustain your network. Renewed determination flooded Naruto. With Tiamat anchoring his energy, he redoubled the compression effort, forcing the containment field to contract further despite the rift's resistance. Almost there, he growled through clenched teeth. The rift collapsed to a single point of absolute darkness, still fighting to maintain its existence. It requires sealing, Vados called, joining them within the affected zone. Her staff, F glowed with celestial energy as she traced complex symbols in the air. A temporary measure until proper authorities can eliminate it completely. No, Naruto countered, surprising both immortal beings. Sealing just contains the problem. We need to transmute it. Transmutation of void energy requires, Vados began. Equal parts creation and destruction, Naruto finished. I know. The essence showed me. Before either could protest further, Naruto channeled Imperial Flame directly into the compressed point of darkness. Rather than attacking it, he surrounded it completely, creating a perfect sphere of golden energy that neither destroyed nor contained but transformed. What are you doing? Tiamat demanded, sensing the enormous power he was channeling. Converting entropy to potential, Naruto replied. Remembering concepts that felt simultaneously foreign and familiar, knowledge from previous emperors filtering through his consciousness. The sphere of golden energy contracted to microscopic size, then expanded in a controlled detonation of pure creative force. Where the void rift had been, reality knit itself together, but not exactly as before. Instead, a small crystalline formation emerged from the ground, pulsing with balanced energy, neither wholly creative nor destructive, but harmonized between states. Naruto collapsed to one knee, breathing heavily. His shadow clones dispersed in puffs of smoke, their remaining chakra returning to him. That was unorthodox, Vados stated, examining the crystal formation with her staff. You converted void energy into a dimensional anchor point. This will actually strengthen local reality against future incursions. Tiamat released Naruto's wrist, her form gradually returning to more humanoid proportions. Unconventional application of imperial abilities, she noted, her tone unreadable. Previous emperors typically excised corrupted reality entirely. Yeah, well, destruction's sometimes necessary, but healing's better when possible, Naruto replied. Standing shakily, the void tendril's touch had left a mark on his shoulder, a small patch where the golden scales appeared dulled, almost tarnished. Vados noticed this with concern. You've suffered contamination, she observed, moving closer to examine the affected area. Void corruption in an imperial vessel is unprecedented. It'll heal, Naruto asserted, though uncertainty crept into his voice. Perhaps, Tiamat responded, or perhaps not. The void adapts to each emperor differently. Vados tapped her staff against the ground twice, creating a field of energy that enveloped the three of them. The distorted landscape around them stabilized, temporal anomalies ceasing within the protected zone. This requires further discussion in a more controlled environment, she decided. My residence would be suitable. Lord Champa is currently away on destruction duties. Without waiting for agreement, she transported them instantly across vast distance. The harsh landscape of twisted rock formations disappeared, replaced by an elegant floating palace suspended above emerald clouds. Architecture unlike anything in Naruto's experience surrounded them, flowing structures that seemed to defy physical laws, built from materials that shifted color with changing light. Welcome to my observatory, Vados announced, gesturing to their surroundings. We can speak freely here without temporal interference. Naruto stared in undisguised wonder. This place is amazing, he breathed, taking in the impossible structures. It's like it's alive somehow. Quasi-sentient architecture, Vados confirmed with a hint of pride. The structures respond to resident needs and aesthetic preferences. She led them through floating archways to an open terrace overlooking the cloud layer. A table materialized as they approached, along with comfortable seating arranged to facilitate conversation. Please, Vados indicated the chairs. Refreshment would be beneficial after energy expenditure of such magnitude. Naruto sat gratefully, the exertion of the void transmutation catching up with him. Tiamat remained standing momentarily, studying their surroundings with careful assessment before finally taking a seat. You've redecorated since my last visit, she noted. The previous aesthetic was less organic. One adapts to changing cosmic fashions, Vados replied lightly. though something in her tone suggested deeper meaning. She tapped her staff once more, and the table filled with an assortment of foods and drinks from across the multiverse. Please, restore yourselves. Naruto examined the offerings curiously, fruits in colors that shouldn't exist, beverages that glowed with inner light, confections that hovered slightly above their plates. After a moment's hesitation, he selected something resembling a purple apple with golden stripes. It's safe for your physiology, Vados assured him. Your imperial transformation renders most dimensional toxins harmless. Naruto bit into the fruit, experiencing a flavor that defied description, simultaneously sweet, savory, and something entirely outside normal taste categories. This is incredible, he managed between bites. Chrono fruit from the temporal orchards of Dimension X-113, Vados explained. They experience their entire growth cycle simultaneously rather than sequentially. While Naruto sampled the exotic offerings, Vados turned her attention to his shoulder, where the void contamination had dulled the imperial scales. May I? She asked, indicating the injury. Naruto nodded, setting aside his half-eaten fruit. Vados extended her hand, not quite touching the affected area but scanning it with energy from her palm. Interesting, she murmured. The corruption appears contained, but it's integrated with the imperial essence rather than simply damaging it. Almost symbiotic. That should be impossible, Tiamat stated, leaning forward to examine the area herself. Imperial energy and void essence are fundamentally opposed. Yet here we observe integration, Vados countered. Perhaps a result of this vessel's unique composition. The presence of Biju energy may provide a mediating influence. Quote, inside Naruto's mindscape, Kurama stirred with concern. They're right, Kit, that void thing left something behind, but it's not attacking your system like it should. It's more like, it's learning from you, or adapting to me, Naruto muttered aloud. Both immortal beings turned to him with sharp interest. Explain, Tiamat demanded. Kurama, the Nine Tails, thinks the void energy isn't trying to corrupt me exactly. It's studying the imperial essence, maybe even adapting to it. Naruto rotated his shoulder experimentally. The affected area felt cooler than the rest of his body but caused no pain. Vados exchanged a significant look with Tiamat. If void entities have evolved to counter imperial energy specifically, the balance tips toward entropy, Tiamat finished grimly. Previous incursions were opportunistic. This suggests strategic evolution. Which means what, exactly? Naruto asked, looking between them. The void has always existed in opposition to ordered reality. Vados explained, her normally composed features showing rare concern. But its manifestations were relatively mindless, entropy personified rather than directed intelligence. What you experienced, Tiamat continued, suggests coordination beyond previous void capabilities. If they've developed methods to specifically counter imperial power, then Ing Dragon Emperor just got even more complicated, Naruto concluded. Indeed, Vados tapped her staff thoughtfully against the floor. The Angels Council should be informed. This development affects all dimensions, not merely those under direct imperial protection. The Council has always preferred non-interference in imperial matters, Tiamat reminded her. Circumstances evolve, Vados countered. Echoing Tiamat's earlier statement, she turned to Naruto with renewed assessment. Your approach to the temporal wound was enlightening. Previous emperors favored eradication over transformation. Perhaps adaptation is precisely what this cosmic cycle requires. Naruto absorbed this, considering implications beyond his initial understanding. So the void is changing its tactics, becoming smarter. And you think I might represent a different approach to fighting it? Perhaps not merely fighting, Vados suggested. Your instinct was to transform rather than destroy. Balance rather than dominance. The multiverse responds to such philosophical shifts. Great, more pressure, Naruto muttered, then straightened with renewed determination. But if that's what's needed, I'll figure it out. I've never backed down from a challenge before. Tiamat studied him with an expression that might have contained grudging approval. Your confidence borders on arrogance, but your results suggest it may be warranted. She turned to Vados. The vessel requires further training, but his instincts appear sound. High praise indeed from the first dragon, Vados noted with subtle amusement. I would offer assistance in his education regarding dimensional mechanics. My observational records span 17 billion years and may prove useful. Wait, Naruto interjected, 17 billion. How old are you exactly? Vados's lips curved in a mysterious smile. Angels exist outside conventional temporal frameworks. Attempting to quantify my existence in linear years would be imprecise. She's ancient even by my standards. Tiamat added, which Naruto found both clarifying and terrifying. Right, he said, processing this information. So we have super old dragons, even older angels. Gods who destroy planets as their day job, and now void entities that are evolving specifically to counter imperial powers. Anything else I should know about? Countless details, Vados responded. But education proceeds most effectively when properly sequenced. For now, addressing your void contamination takes priority. She rose gracefully, gesturing for Naruto to follow. The observatory contains healing chambers designed for energy purification. While not specifically calibrated for imperial physiology, they may stabilize your condition until more permanent solutions present themselves. As they traversed the floating palace, Naruto found himself increasingly aware of its impossible architecture. Corridors extended longer than the exterior dimensions should allow, rooms reconfigured as they passed through doorways. And occasional windows revealed completely different celestial landscapes. This place doesn't follow normal space rules, does it? He asked. The observatory exists partially between dimensions. Vados explained. Its structure reflects this liminal state. Angels require facilities that accommodate our multidimensional duties. They arrived at a chamber dominated by a circular pool filled with luminous liquid that shimmered between silver and blue. Symbols Naruto didn't recognize adorned the walls and floor in patterns that subtly shifted when not directly observed. Please remove your upper garments and enter the pool, Vados instructed. The purification process works most effectively with direct contact. Naruto hesitated briefly before complying. As he removed his jacket and mesh undershirt, the full extent of his transformation became visible. The imperial scales now covered his entire torso, upper arms, and were beginning to extend down his back. The contaminated area on his shoulder stood out as a dull patch among the otherwise luminous golden-orange pattern. He stepped into the pool, surprised to find the liquid felt more substantial than water, almost gel-like in consistency, yet it parted easily around his body. As he submerged to chest level, the chamber's symbols brightened, responding to his presence. Interesting, Vados observed, circling the pool. The purification matrix recognizes imperial energy as a valid template. That simplifies the process. The liquid began to glow more intensely where it touched the contaminated scales. Naruto felt gentle warmth spreading through the affected area, along with a curious sensation like tiny electric currents mapping his energy pathways. The chamber analyzes your optimal energy configuration and attempts to restore it, Vados explained. However, I note unusual resistance from the contamination. It appears integrated with your network rather than simply invasive. Tiamat approached the pool's edge, kneeling to examine the process more closely. The void adapts. This confirms our concerns. She dipped one clawed finger into the luminous liquid, adding her own energy to the purification matrix. The chamber's symbols flared in response, reconfiguring to accommodate this new input. What exactly are you doing? Naruto asked as the sensation intensified. Providing imperial reference patterns, Tiamat replied. The chamber lacks sufficient data on proper emperor energy configurations. The combined energies created a visible reaction where they met the contamination. The dulled scales began to brighten, but rather than returning to their original golden-orange hue, they developed a unique iridescence, still primarily golden but now containing subtle traces of midnight blue that shifted when Naruto moved. Fascinating, Vados murmured, leaning closer. Rather than rejecting the void energy, your system has incorporated it. Transmutation rather than purification. Is that bad? Naruto asked, studying the changed scales with concern. Unprecedented, Tiamat corrected. Neither positive nor negative inherently, but certainly significant. Your natural inclination toward integration rather than rejection appears to manifest even at cellular levels, Vados observed. You transform rather than destroy that which threatens you. A philosophical approach embedded in your very biology. The purification process completed, the liquid's glow fading to its normal luminescence. Naruto stood, watching as the substance slid from his skin without leaving residue. How does it feel? Tiamat asked, studying the transformed scales. Naruto focused on the area, extending his awareness through his energy network. Different, but not wrong. Like I've gained something rather than lost something. He rotated his shoulder experimentally. Actually, it feels stronger somehow. You've incorporated an aspect of your opposition, Vados noted. Understanding through assimilation rather than elimination. Most intriguing. As Naruto stepped from the pool and retrieved his clothing, Tiamat and Vados exchanged significant looks that contained volumes of unspoken communication. This development requires further observation, Vados finally stated. I propose a temporary alliance. My observational capabilities complement your historical knowledge, Tiamat. Together we can provide more comprehensive guidance for this unconventional emperor. An angel offering direct assistance in imperial matters. Tiamat's expression contained rare surprise. The council permits this. I exercise discretionary authority in matters of multiversal stability, Vados replied smoothly. What the council doesn't explicitly forbid, I may pursue at my judgment. Naruto sensed underlying currents in this exchange, political implications beyond his current understanding. So you'll help train me? He asked, focusing on the practical outcome. FFER observational guidance and dimensional expertise, Vados clarified. The angels cannot directly involve themselves in power struggles between cosmic forces, but information sharing violates no prohibitions. Translation. She'll help without officially helping, Tiamat summarized with dry amusement. Typical angelic hair splitting. I prefer precise interpretation of cosmic mandates, Vados countered with a hint of a smile. Their exchange was interrupted by a distant chime that resonated through the observatory. Vados turned sharply, her staff glowing in response. Interesting timing, she murmured. It appears we have another visitor. The observatory's structure shifted around them, reconfiguring to create a direct path to what appeared to be an arrival platform. A swirling portal had formed there, its edges crackling with crimson energy distinct from the void rifts they'd encountered previously. Demonic transit signature, Tiamat identified, her posture tensing slightly. Highly ranked entity. Naruto instinctively prepared for potential conflict, the imperial scales warming in response to his alertness. Hostile. Unlikely, Vados responded, though her stance suggested readiness nonetheless. This arrival utilizes established dimensional protocols rather than forced entry. The portal stabilized, and through it stepped a young woman who immediately commanded attention. She possessed striking crimson hair falling in waves to her waist, eyes of supernatural blue-green that gleamed with intelligence, and an aura of authority that belied her youthful appearance. Her attire suggested aristocratic standing, an elaborate black and crimson uniform with gold accents that emphasized her considerable curves while maintaining regal dignity. She surveyed her surroundings with practiced assessment before focusing on the observatory's occupants. Recognition flashed across her features when she spotted Vados. Angel Vados, she greeted with formal respect, inclining her head slightly. I apologize for the unscheduled arrival. Dimensional instabilities necessitated a detour through your sector. Lady Rias Gramori, Vados acknowledged. Your transit is noted without censure. These are indeed unusual times for interdimensional travel. The newcomer's attention shifted to Tiamat, her expression registering appropriate caution. The first dragon honors us with her presence. The Netherworld Court sends its eternal respect. Your courtesy is acknowledged, Gramori heir, Tiamat responded with formal neutrality. Finally, Rias turned toward Naruto, her supernatural eyes widening slightly as she registered the imperial scales visible where his clothing didn't cover them. The rumors are true then, she stated, studying him with intense curiosity. A new dragon emperor has awakened. And unexpectedly, human in origin. Naruto met her evaluating gaze directly. Naruto Uzumaki, from the shinobi dimension. And yeah, still figuring out this whole emperor business myself. Something like amusement flickered across Rias's aristocratic features. Refreshingly direct, the Netherworld Court will find that quality either charming or alarming, depending on the elder in question. What brings a devil princess to angelic territory? Tiamat inquired, her tone suggesting the question carried significant political weight. Rias's expression sobered immediately. Investigation of concerning patterns. The Netherworld has experienced 3 void incursions in the past month, unprecedented in our historical records. Our analysis suggests coordinated targeting of dimensional nexus points. Quote, Vados and Tiamat exchanged alarmed glances. Your intelligence confirms our observations, Vados stated. We've identified similar patterns across multiple dimensions, including targeted corruption of temporal matrices. Then my journey proves fortuitous, Rias concluded. Her gaze returned to Naruto with renewed interest. A newly awakened Emperor Duri. Escalating void activity suggests cosmic significance. Perhaps our investigations would benefit from mutual information sharing. Before either Tiamat or Vados could respond, Naruto stepped forward. If these void things are targeting multiple dimensions, then working together makes sense. I've only been Emperor for a short time, but I've already seen what they can do. Stopping them is going to take more than just one group's knowledge. His directness appeared to surprise Rias, though not unpleasantly. Well said. The old boundaries between cosmic courts may prove counterproductive in current circumstances. The vessel speaks without full understanding of interdimensional politics, Tiamat noted, though without her earlier dismissiveness. However, his assessment holds merit. Isolation serves only entropy's advance. I concur, Vados added. Temporary alliance between our respective authorities may prove necessary, if carefully structured to maintain cosmic balances. Rias nodded, then addressed Naruto directly. I would be interested to hear your experiences with the void entities. The Netherworld Research Council has accumulated substantial data, but first-hand imperial perspective would be invaluable. Sure, Naruto agreed easily. Though I'm still pretty new at all this. Might not have the answers you're looking for. Fresh perspective often identifies patterns long-established observers overlook. Rias countered with a smile that transformed her formal demeanor into something more approachable. Sometimes questions prove more valuable than answers. The observatory responded to their conversation, the arrival platform reconfiguring into a more suitable meeting area with appropriate seating for all parties. Vados gestured toward this arrangement. Hey, perhaps we should continue this discussion more comfortably, she suggested. Lady Grimori's journey likely required significant energy expenditure. As they moved toward the seating area, Naruto found himself walking alongside Rias. Despite her formal bearing, she carried herself with the confident grace of someone accustomed to both political power and physical combat, reminding him somewhat of Tsunade. Though with a different flavor of authority. Your world, the shinobi dimension, is relatively isolated in the cosmic web, she observed conversationally. Few from our realm have visited it directly. Is it true your people manipulate elemental forces through physical gestures? Hand signs, yeah, Naruto confirmed. They help shape chakra into different techniques. Though not everyone needs them for every jutsu. I can make shadow clones without signs now. Fascinating, Rias replied with genuine interest. The Netherworld uses magical circles for similar purposes, geometric patterns that channel demonic energy. The underlying principles may share common origins despite dimensional separation. Their discussion continued as they settled into the seating arrangement. What began as formal information exchange gradually evolved into more dynamic conversation, with Naruto describing his dimension's power systems while Rias explained the hierarchical structure of the Netherworld and its relationship to other cosmic domains. Vados and Tiamat contributed occasional clarifications or historical context, but largely allowed the younger entities to establish their own rapport. At one point, Naruto noticed them exchanging looks that might have contained veiled amusement at the natural flow of conversation between devil aristocrat and shinobi-turned-emperor. Your transformation appears incomplete, Rias observed eventually, gesturing toward where the imperial scales remained visible at Naruto's collar and wrists. Is this standard for a new emperor's awakening? Accelerate. Circumstances necessitated unconventional procedures, Tiamat interjected before Naruto could respond. The void targeted his dimension specifically, requiring immediate evacuation and training. Targeted. Rias's expression sharpened with strategic interest. That supports our theory of coordinated action rather than random incursion. The void appears to be developing tactical intelligence. We observed something similar during our management of a temporal wound, Vados confirmed. The corruption demonstrated adaptive properties consistent with strategic intent rather than entropic randomness. The conversation turned toward analysis of recent void activities across multiple dimensions. Rias produced crystalline data spheres from an elegant carrying case, each containing recorded observations from different netherworld monitoring stations. These displayed three-dimensional projections of void incursions, allowing comparison of tactical patterns. Note the formation similarities despite dimensional variance, Rias pointed out, indicating nearly identical breach configurations across wildly different realities. This suggests centralized planning rather than autonomous action by individual harvesters. A void intelligence coordinating across dimensions, Tiamat mused grimly. Unprecedented in recorded history. As the discussion continued, Naruto found himself in Kriya, singly able to follow the complex interdimensional politics and cosmic forces being described. Knowledge from previous emperors filtered through his consciousness when relevant topics arose, providing context he shouldn't personally possess. The pattern resembles a search algorithm, he observed suddenly, interrupting a technical exchange between Vados and Rias regarding dimensional breach mechanics. All three turned to him with varying degrees of surprise. Elaborate, Vados encouraged. Naruto approached the floating projections, studying them from different angles. They're not just attacking randomly. See how they probe different types of dimensions systematically, testing defenses, cataloging responses, then adjusting tactics for the next incursion. He pointed to specific sequences across multiple projections. They start with small breaches, then escalate based on resistance encountered. Classic information gathering tactics. They're building a comprehensive model of multiversal defense capabilities. Rias's eyes widened slightly. He's right. We've been analyzing individual incursions rather than viewing them as components of a larger intelligence-gathering operation. If correct, this changes our strategic approach considerably, Vados noted, reassessing the data with this new perspective. Tiamat observed Naruto with something approaching respect. The Tactica L analysis comes from your native training rather than imperial knowledge, she noted. An interesting integration of perspectives. I was trained by some of the best strategists in my world, Naruto confirmed. Shikamaru could look at a shogi board and see 20 moves ahead. This is just a bigger, weirder board. Then perhaps we should consider counterintelligence measures, Rias suggested. If they gather information, we could provide misleading data points, while simultaneously developing our own coordination network, Vados added. The Angels Council maintains observation posts throughout the multiverse, but rarely shares intelligence with other cosmic authorities. The Dragon Courts similarly hoard knowledge, Tiamat acknowledged. A short-sighted practice in current circumstances. As they discussed potential cooperation frameworks, Naruto felt a sudden sharp pain from his transformed scales, the area that had incorporated void energy. He winced, pressing a hand against his shoulder. Something wrong? Rias asked, noticing his discomfort. Before he could respond, the observatory trembled around them. Reality rippled as though viewed through disturbed water. Vados's staff flared with warning light. Dimensional disturbance, she announced, immediately alert. Localized but intense. The pain in Naruto's shoulder intensified, the transformed scales pulsing th dark energy that spread outward in veins across the golden pattern. It's reacting to something, he grimaced, fighting to control the spreading darkness. The void contamination, it's activating. Tiamat moved to his side instantly, placing her palm against the affected area. Her touch burned like fire, but the pain carried purpose, imperial energy countering the void's spread. Connection established, she hissed, eyes widening. The contamination forms a dimensional beacon. They're tracking us through it. The observatory shuddered more violently. Wall sections dissolved into static before reforming. The quasi-sentient architecture struggling to maintain structural integrity as something pressed against dimensional barriers. Impossible, Vados stated, though evidence contradicted her assertion. The observatory exists between dimensions. Direct targeting should not be possible without established coordinates. They're using me, Naruto realized, horror dawning. The void energy I absorbed, it's not just contamination. It's a tracker. As if confirming his words, reality tore open several meters away. Unlike previous rifts, this breach appeared controlled, its edges stable rather than chaotically fluctuating. Through this precision-cut hole in dimensions stepped a figure that defied conventional description. Humanoid in basic shape but composed of overlapping void essence rather than physical matter. It stood nearly 3 meters tall. Where a face should be, it possessed only a reflective surface that mirrored their own appearances back at them, distorted and wrong. Its limbs terminated not in hands but in writhing tendrils that constantly reshaped themselves. "Greetings, Emperor," it spoke, its voice bypassing conventional sound to resonate directly within their minds. "Your integration experiment proved most informative." Tiamat moved protectively before Naruto, her form beginning the transition to full draconic nature. "Void Architect," she identified, her voice carrying millennia of hatred. "Your kind were banished beyond the cosmic membrane eons ago. Circumstances evolve. First Dragon," the entity responded, using Tiamat's own words from earlier. "Barriers weaken. Understanding grows. Adaptation proceeds." Vados raised her staff, celestial energy gathering at its tip. "This observatory exists under angelic protection. Your presence violates cosmic treaty. Treaties require mutual recognition of authority," the architect replied with what might have been amusement. "We recognize no authority but entropy's inevitable triumph." Its mirrored face turned toward Naruto. "The new vessel introduces intriguing variables. Human substrate, Biju integration, philosophical deviation from previous emperor patterns. Most promising. What do you want?" Naruto demanded, fighting through the pain as the void energy in his shoulder continued spreading. "Want? An imprecise concept. We seek optimization of universal entropy. Your existence, CE represents both obstacle and opportunity." The entity's form rippled. "The experiment continues regardless of your participation. Though your willing cooperation would yield more efficient data collection." Rias had moved to a strategic position, crimson-black energy gathering around her hands. "The Netherworld Court rejects void incursion," she stated formally. "Departure or destruction are your only options." The architect's attention shifted to her. "Grimoire Air, your dimension provides valuable data on energy sustainability through emotional harvesting. Your presence here was unanticipated but fortuitous." "Enough talk," Tiamat growled, her transformation accelerating. "You defile this realm with your presence." The architect made a gesture that might have been dismissive. "Phi, Sakal confrontation remains inefficient while the connection exists." It pointed one tendril toward Naruto's shoulder. "The seed is planted. Data flows. This manifestation serves merely as formal introduction. Remove your contamination," Vados demanded, her normally composed features hardening. "Impossible. It is no longer ours to remove. The Emperor has incorporated it, transmuted it, claimed ownership through biological integration." The entity's mirror face somehow conveyed satisfaction despite its featurelessness. "An unexpected approach. Previous vessels rejected, fought, contained. This one adapts. Fascinating methodology." Naruto stepped forward despite Tiamat's protective stance. "If you can track me, that means I can track you too. The connection works both ways." For the first time, the architect's confident demeanor faltered slightly. "A theoretically valid but practically limited observation. Your understanding of dimensional navigation remains rudimentary." "I'm a fast learner," Naruto countered, reaching toward the connection he now felt through the transformed scales. The void energy responded to his will, reluctantly but undeniably. The architect's form wavered. "Interesting. Direct manipulation of void essence without corruption. Statistical improbability exceeding standard parameters." "I told you before," Tiamat addressed Naruto without taking her eyes from the void entity. "Your capacity for integration rather than rejection represents deviation from imperial norms." "A deviation with significant implications," the architect added. "We will be watching your development with great interest, Emperor Naruto Uzumaki." Before anyone could respond further, the entity began dissolving, its form dissipating like smoke. The introduction concludes. Data collection continues. Until next convergence. The precision-cut rift closed behind it, reality knitting itself together with unnerving smoothness. The pain in Naruto's shoulder subsided immediately, the spreading darkness receding to the original area of transformed scales. A moment of stunned silence followed the entity's departure. "Well," Rias finally spoke, that was illuminating in several concerning ways. "A void architect," Tiamat repeated, her form gradually returning to humanoid proportions. "They haven't manifested directly in inhabited dimensions since the third cosmic cycle." "What exactly was that thing?" Naruto asked, rubbing his shoulder where the pain had been. Void architects represent the organizational intelligence behind harvester activities, Vados explained. Her staff still glowing with defensive energy. They rarely manifest physically, preferring to operate through proxies. Its direct appearance suggests your importance to their plans, Rias added. Studying Naruto with new consideration. Though whether as threat or opportunity remains unclear. Both, I'd guess, Naruto replied grimly. It seemed pretty interested in how I'm handling He imperial powers differently than previous emperors. Tiamat approached him, examining the transformed scales on his shoulder. The connection is dormant again, but remains intact. Your biological integration of void essence creates unprecedented complications. Can we remove it? He asked. Removal would likely require excising the affected tissue entirely, Vados assessed clinically. And how completely you've incorporated it into your imperial matrix, such removal could destabilize your entire transformation. So I'm stuck with a void tracking beacon, Naruto concluded. Great. Not necessarily a disadvantage, Rias suggested, her strategic mind clearly working through implications. As you noted, connections function bidirectionally. With proper development, you might use this link to anticipate void movements. Risky, Tiamat cautioned. Intentional engagement with void energies typically leads to corruption. Yet he's already demonstrated unusual resistance, Vados countered. His integration approach rather than rejection strategy may represent evolutionary advancement in imperial methodology. Naruto looked between the three powerful beings, their discussio. Revolving around him yet somewhat detached from his immediate concerns. Hey, he interjected, reclaiming their attention. Whatever this connection means, we now know the void forces are coordinating across dimensions. They're gathering information, developing strategies, and specifically tracking imperial energy. That means we need to do the same, coordinate between different cosmic groups, share information, and prepare for whatever they're planning. His straightforward assessment earned considering looks from all three. The vessel raises valid points, Tiamat acknowledged. Tradition. Separation between cosmic authorities serves entropy's advantage. The Angels Council will resist direct alliance, Vados noted, but information sharing protocols could be established without violating cosmic mandates. The Netherworld Court would welcome such arrangements, Rias confirmed. Our research division has accumulated substantial data on void activities that could benefit mutual understanding. As they discussed potential cooperation frameworks, Naruto felt strange resonance from the imperial essence, almost approval, as though his suggestion aligned with some deeper purpose. Knowledge from previous emperors filtered through his consciousness, fragmented memories of cosmic councils, alliance formations, defensive preparations against existential threats. The celestial nexus, he spoke suddenly, drawing on information he shouldn't personally possess. Previous emperors used it as neutral ground for interdimensional conferences. We could establish something similar. A place where representatives from different cosmic authorities could meet safely. Tiamat studied him with sharp interest. Azur's knowledge surfaces again. The ninth emperor was known for such diplomatic initiatives. The suggestion has merit, Vados conceded. Though establishing such a nexus requires considerable power and dimensional expertise. Between an angel, the first dragon, a devil princess, and the dragon emperor. I think we've got that covered, Naruto replied with a confident grin that somehow lightened the atmosphere despite recent events. Rias returned his smile, her supernatural eyes gleaming with interest. Your approach differs refreshingly from traditional cosmic politics, Emperor Uzumaki. Perhaps that's exactly what the multiverse requires in current circumstances. Indeed, Vados agreed, her normally reserved expression warming slightly. Convention serves poorly against unprecedented threats. Even Tiamat appeared less disdainful than usual. The vessel continues to surprise. Perhaps the essence chose more wisely than initially apparent. Naruto looked between them, sensing shifting dynamics and emerging possibilities. The void presented a grave threat, yes, but also an opportunity to forge new connections across dimensional boundaries. Previous emperors had maintained cosmic balance through power and authority. Perhaps his path would instead emphasize cooperation and integration. So, he asked with characteristic directness, where do we start? The question hung in the air like a challenge and a promise, the beginning of something new. In the ancient cycles of multiversal balance. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Crimson Convergence. Midnight obsidian towers spiraled impossibly upward into a sky stained perpetual crimson. Constellations UNKN. Own to human astronomy traced eldritch patterns through the vermilion heavens, while 3 moons of varying sizes and colors, violet, amber, and bone white, cast competing shadows across a landscape that defied conventional physics. Forests of crystalline trees glittered along the horizon, their translucent leaves chiming softly as currents of energy rather than wind passed through them. "Welcome to the Netherworld," Rias Grimoire announced as reality stabilized around them. More specifically, the Grimoire ancestral territories within the Devil Realm. Naruto turned slowly, absorbing the alien beauty of this dimension. Unlike the harsh training grounds of Zenith or the abstract geometries of the Celestial Nexus, the Netherworld possessed a dark majesty that somehow felt more tangible, more viscerally real despite its otherworldly nature. "It's not what I expected," he admitted. "When you said Netherworld, I thought, fire and brimstone, tortured souls and pitchforks," Rias suggested with amused tolerance. "Common misconceptions from human mythology. We cultivate certain reputational elements for various purposes, but the reality is considerably more complex." They stood atop an elegant spire that offered panoramic views of a sprawling metropolitan center below. Unlike human cities built primarily for functional necessity, this urban landscape appeared designed with aesthetic purpose foremost. Graceful architecture flowing like liquid shadow, streets laid out in patterns that from their elevation revealed themselves as massive arcane symbols, buildings illuminated by lights in colors Naruto had no names for. "The imperial essence maintains equilibrium remarkably well in this environment," Tiamat observed, her attention focused on Naruto rather than the scenery. "Previous vessels often experienced destabilization when first entering negative-aligned dimensions." "Is that a compliment?" Naruto asked, grinning at the ancient dragon. "Because it sounded almost like one." "Observation, not praise," Tiamat corrected, though without her earlier disdain. "Your adaptation continues to exceed statistical precedent." Vados tapped her staff once against the obsidian surface beneath them, creating concentric rings of energy that expanded outward before dissipating. "Dimensional integrity appears stable despite recent void disturbances. Your barriers are impressively maintained." "Lady Grimoire, the Netherworld Court takes dimensional security seriously," Rias replied, "particularly since the incursions began. We've redirected significant resources toward boundary reinforcement." Their discussion was interrupted by the arrival of 2 figures ascending to the spire via a crimson transportation circle. One male, one female, both appearing approximately Rias's age in human terms. Though Naruto had learned such appearances meant little among immortal species. The woman moved with lethal grace, her long black hair tied in a ponytail that accentuated elegant features set in perpetual vigilance. She wore fitted armor that combined practical protection with aesthetic refinement, a sword secured at her hip. The man presented stark contrast: relaxed posture, stylish but impractical clothing, blonde hair and aristocratic features arranged in an expression of casual interest belying sharp assessment in his eyes. "Lady Rias," the woman addressed formally, dropping to one knee momentarily before rising. "The dimensional sensors detected your return accompanied by..." Her eyes widened slightly as she registered the nature of Rias's companions, unexpected entities. "Akeno, Kiba," Rias greeted warmly. "Your promptness is appreciated as always. Allow me to introduce our guests." She gestured toward each in turn. "Vados, Angel Observer of Universe 7. Tiamat, first of the 5 dragons. And Naruto Uzumaki, the newly awakened Dragon Emperor." Both newcomers displayed momentary shock before composing themselves with practiced decorum. "The honor is unexpected and significant," the man, Kiba, stated with a formal bow that somehow managed to convey both respect and caution. "The Grimoire household welcomes such distinguished visitors to our territory. Your courtesy is acknowledged," Vados responded with appropriate formality. Naruto, less versed in cosmic diplomatic protocols, opted for direct approach. "Nice to meet you both," he offered with a genuine smile. "This is my first time in the Netherworld, it's pretty amazing." His casual greeting earned subtly different reactions: surprise from Kiba, veiled amusement from Akeno, and the barest hint of a smile from Rias. "The Emperor maintains his native cultural communication patterns," Tiamat explained, which Naruto recognized as her attempt to excuse what she perceived as a social lapse. "Refreshing," Akeno commented, her voice carrying melodic undertones that suggested something beyond human ancestry. Protocol grows tiresome when overobserved. She studied Naruto with undisguised curiosity. A human origin emperor. The cosmic implications are stimulating. Something in her tone made Naruto suspect she meant more than the academic interest her words suggested. Rias noticed as well, clearing her throat subtly. Akeno, please inform my brother that we'll be proceeding to the research division directly. Kiba, arrange appropriate accommodations in the diplomatic quarter. She turned to her guests. Unless you'd prefer to begin with formal court introductions. The Mao would certainly wish to greet visitors of your cosmic standing. Reseer. Priorities supersede diplomatic formalities, Tiamat stated firmly. The void connection requires immediate analysis. Vados nodded in agreement. Political protocols can follow information gathering. The connection's properties represent the more urgent concern. As you wish, Rias gestured, and a complex magical circle formed beneath their feet, crimson symbols arranging themselves in concentric rings. The research division maintains our most advanced analytical equipment. If answers exist regarding the void contamination, we'll find them there. The transportation circle activated, reality blurring momentarily before resolving into a vastly different environment. Gone were the aesthetic excesses of the city above, replaced by clinical functionality. The chamber they materialized within resembled an advanced laboratory combining elements Naruto recognized from Konoha's hospitals with technologies and magical apparatus entirely foreign to his experience. Multiple technicians, devils of varying appearance, looked up from workstations in surprise at their arrival. One individual stepped forward immediately, a woman with short blue hair, glasses, and an expression of perpetual analytical focus. Unlike the others, she showed no shock at their appearance, merely adjusting her glasses with practiced precision. Lady Grimori, your return occurred 37 minutes ahead of projected schedule. Her eyes moved methodically across each visitor, cataloging details with computer-like efficiency. Angel Observer Vados, first recorded presence in Netherworld archives in 732 years. First, Dragon Tiamat, no previous recorded appearances in Grimori territory. Unknown entity demonstrating Imperial Essence signatures, unprecedented. This is Tsubaki Shinra, our head of analytical operations, Rias introduced. Her observational precision is unmatched in the Netherworld Research Division. You maintain impressive record keeping, Vados acknowledged. Tsubaki inclined her head slightly at the compliment. Information represents our primary defense against existential threats. The void incursions necessitated expansion of our monitoring capabilities. We require your most advanced energy analysis equipment. Rias instructed. Emperor Uzumaki has developed a unique connection to void energies that demands immediate investigation. Unique how? Tsubaki inquired, professional interest immediately engaged. Integration rather than contamination, Tiamat supplied. The vessel has incorporated void essence into his imperial matrix without experiencing standard corruption effects. Tsubaki's normally impassive features registered genuine surprise. Theoretically impossible, void essence fundamentally opposes ordered energy patterns. Her attention focused fully on Naruto. May I examine the affected area? Naruto nodded, removing his jacket to expose his shoulder where the transformed scales displayed their unique iridescence, primarily golden orange but now kontai. Ning rippling patterns of midnight blue that shifted when he moved. Tsubaki approached cautiously, producing an instrument resembling a crystal wand from her lab coat. This scanner detects energy G natures across dimensional wavelengths without disrupting existing patterns. You'll feel mild resonance but no pain. As she brought the device near his shoulder, it immediately began emitting soft chimes in complex, discordant patterns. Tsubaki's eyes widened behind her glasses as she studied readings appearing in the air before her. Magical displays showing data incomprehensible to Naruto but evidently significant to the researcher. Impossible, she whispered, genuine awe breaking through her professional demeanor. The void essence hasn't merely attached to your energy matrix, it's been fundamentally restructured at the sub-quantum level, neither fully imperial nor void, but a stable hybrid state that shouldn't exist according to known physical laws. Is that good? Naruto asked, watching as she continued scanning different sections of the transformed scales. Good is subjective terminology, Tsubaki replied automatically. Unprecedented, Certainly. Potentially revolutionary for our understanding of fundamental cosmic energies. She looked up from her device. Did you consciously direct this integration process? Naruto shook his head. It just happened when I was injured by a void tendril. My body adapted instead of rejecting it. Fascinating. She straightened, addressing the broader group. We should conduct comprehensive analysis immediately. This phenomenon could provide critical insights into void countermeasures. At her direction, laboratory staff quickly prepared a dedicated analysis chamber. Unlike the cold clinical settings Naruto associated with medical procedures in his world, this room hummed with magical energy, intricate circles inscribed across walls, ceiling and floor creating a three-dimensional matrix of power. The dimensional resonance chamber allows non-invasive examination of energy patterns across multiple reality wavelengths, Tsubaki explained as Naruto was positioned at the center. We developed it specifically for studying void contamination samples without risking spread. Is it safe? Naruto asked, eyeing the increasingly complex magical circles activating around him. 97% probability of non-harmful outcomes. She replied matter-of-factly. Previous subjects lacked your adaptive capabilities, suggesting even higher safety margins in your case. Previous subjects? Vados inquired sharply. Rias intervened smoothly. We've examined contaminated materials and affected wildlife from incursion sites. No sentient beings. Tsubaki continued adjusting settings, apparently oblivious to the momentary tension. Please remain still during the initial calibration sequence. Any significant movement could distort readings. The chamber hummed with increasing energy as magical circles rotated in complex, interlocking patterns. Crimson light bathed Naruto's form, focusing particularly on the transformed scales. He felt gentle warmth spreading through his shoulder, along with curious tingling. As the magic interfaced with the void imperial hybrid energy, commencing deep pattern analysis, Tsubaki announced, manipulating floating symbols that responded to her gestures. Dimensional resonance at 17% and rising. As the analysis progressed, three-dimensional projections materialized above Naruto, showing magnified representations of the energy patterns within his transformed scales. Even to his untrained eye, the visualization revealed something remarkable: golden imperial energy and midnight void essence not merely coexisting but intertwining in complex, harmonious patterns impossible to separate without destroying both. Extraordinary, Tiamat murmured, studying the projections with intense focus. The integration occurs at the fundamental creation level, not merely surface bonding. The patterns demonstrate characteristics of conscious design rather than random mutation, Vados observed. Almost as though directed by underlying intelligence. Tsubaki manipulated the displays, focusing on particular sections. There appears to be a communication matrix embedded within the hybrid structure, dormant currently but capable of activation under specific conditions. The tracking function the architect utilized, Rias concluded. Can it be disabled without disrupting the overall integration? Uncertain, Tsubaki replied, adjusting her glasses. The communication aspects are thoroughly woven into the hybrid energy. Selective disruption would require precision beyond our current capabilities. Inside Naruto's mindscape, Kurama stirred with concern. This is getting complicated, Kit. That void stuff isn't just sitting there, it's evolving inside you. Evolving how? Naruto questioned silently. It's learning from your chakra patterns, your imperial energy, even from me. The fox responded. Not necessarily harmful yet, but definitely not passive either. Naruto relayed this information aloud to the others. Kurama, the nine tails, says void essence is actively learning from my energy systems. This revelation caused immediate reaction. Tsubaki rapidly adjusted her instruments while Tiamat moved closer, her eyes narrowing as she studied the projections with renewed concern. Biju perception confirms our analysis, Tsubaki stated. The hybrid energy demonstrates adaptive properties consistent with rudimentary learning algorithms. Can you communicate with it? Rias asked Naruto directly. If it possesses intelligence of any kind, perhaps direction is possible. I don't think it's conscious exactly, Naruto replied, concentrating on the sensations from his shoulder. More like, programmed. Like a really advanced paper bomb that can rewrite its own explosion pattern. An apt analogy, Vados commented. The void, Essence likely contains embedded directives established by the architect, but your integration process has altered its fundamental nature, creating new possibilities beyond its original programming. Tsubaki completed her analysis sequence, the magical circles gradually slowing their rotation. Initial findings suggest the hybrid energy remains primarily under Emperor Uzumaki's biological control, despite communication capabilities. The integration appears to have subordinated void directives to Imperial essence dominance. In simpler terms, Rias translated for Naruto's benefit, you've tamed it rather than being infected by it. Your body rewrote its basic nature. That's good, right? Naruto confirmed as the analysis equipment powered down. Potentially revolutionary, Tsubaki replied. Already documenting findings on floating magical displays. If replicable, this integration method could transform our approach to void contamination entirely. The key question remains the communication function can be utilized bidirectionally, Tiamat noted, circling Naruto with analytical interest. If the vessel can access void networks without corruption, strategic advantages become significant. Hold on, Naruto interjected. You're talking about me using this connection to spy on the void forces. Such capability would provide unprecedented intelligence, Vados acknowledged. However, active engagement with the connection carries substantial risk of counter-infiltration. Rias approached, studying both the displays and Naruto himself with equal intensity. The decision ultimately belongs to Emperor Uzumaki. The potential benefits must be weighed against personal risk. Naruto considered this, absently rotating his shoulder where the transformed scales continued their subtle iridescent shifting. If this connection could help us understand what they're planning, maybe even prevent attacks before they happen, the risk seems worth taking. But we should be careful about how we approach it. A measured response, Tiamat noted with what might have been approval. Previous emperors might have rushed toward either extreme, complete rejection or immediate exploitation. We should establish proper monitoring protocols before any attempt at connection utilization, Tsubaki suggested, already designing magical frameworks on her displays. The research division can develop appropriate safeguards within approximately 12 hours. Then I recommend rest and recovery during that interval, Rias proposed. Interdimensional travel and extensive energy analysis both tax stamina, even for beings of your caliber. She gestured, and a transportation circle began forming beneath them. I've arranged appropriate accommodations in our diplomatic quarter. The circle activated, shifting them to an elegantly appointed chamber that somehow balanced netherworld aesthetic preferences with comfortable functionality. Large windows overlooked the crimson-hued landscape, while furnishings crafted from materials Naruto couldn't identify provided surprisingly comfortable seating. These rooms connect to individual quarters suited to your respective preferences, Rias explained, indicating ornate doorways leading from the main chamber. My staff has attempted to accommodate your dimensional norms, though please inform us of any adjustments required. Your hospitality honors cosmic protocol. Vados acknowledged formally. The arrangements appear adequate, Tiamat added, which from her represented significant praise. Naruto approached the windows, watching as creatures resembling a cross between birds and serpents soared through the crimson sky. This place is incredible, he commented. Nothing like what humans imagine the underworld to be. Human mythology captures fragments of truth filtered through limited perceptual frameworks, Rias replied, joining him at the window. The netherworld encompasses far more than simply afterlife management, though that remains one of our cosmic functions. So you really do deal with human souls? Naruto asked, genuinely curious. Certain divisions within our cosmic authority handle soul transitions, judgment, and appropriate placement, she confirmed. However, the Grimoire clan specializes in knowledge acquisition and interdimensional relations rather than afterlife administration. Our conversation paused as servants entered, devils of varying appearances bearing refreshments and additional amenities before departing with formal efficiency. I'll leave you to rest, Rias announced. Please consider these quarters your domain during your stay. Should you require anything, simply activate the communication circles by the entryways. As she turned to depart, Naruto spoke up. Actually, I was hoping to learn more about the netherworld while we're waiting for the research team. Would you mind showing me around a bit? If you're not too busy with, devil princess stuff. Rias paused, something like amusement flickering in her supernatural eyes. Devil princess stuff. You know what I mean, Naruto replied with a grin. Important political meetings or whatever it as you do when not investigating void incursions. Vados and Tiamat exchanged meaningful glances that Naruto pretended not to notice. I suppose first-hand observation would provide better contextual understanding than reports alone. Rias conceded, though her slight smile suggested she saw through his casual request. A tour of key facilities could prove educational. The vessel should rest, Tiamat interjected, though with less force than her words suggested. Movement and environmental familiarization often facilitate recovery more effectively than static rest, Vados countered smoothly. Cultural exchange would benefit long-term alliance possibilities. Naruto suspected the angel was being deliberately supportive for reasons beyond simple diplomatic courtesy, but he welcomed the assistance regardless. I'll have him back before the research team completes their preparations, Rias promised, her formal tone belied by the subtle glint in her eye. Consider it part of his interdimensional education. Without waiting for further discussion, she gestured for Naruto to join her at the chamber's exit. He followed, feeling Tiamat's assessing gaze on his back as they departed. Once the door closed behind them, Rias's formal demeanor relaxed perceptibly. Your guardian dragon seems protective, she observed as they walked along an elegantly appointed corridor. Tiamat, she started out thinking I was completely unqualified to be emperor, Naruto replied with a shrug. I think she's gradually decided I'm not entirely hopeless. High praise from the first dragon, Rias noted with genuine amusement. Her reputation for disdain toward lesser beings spans multiple cosmologies. What about you? Naruto asked directly. What do you think about a human becoming dragon emperor? Rias considered this as they descended a spiraling staircase that seemed to defy conventional physics, steps appearing only as their feet approached. I find it intriguing, she finally answered. The netherworld values ambition and potential above circumstance of origin. Many of our greatest lords rose from humble beginnings. Your transformation represents the ultimate expression of Hat principle, potential transcending inherent limitations. They emerged onto a balcony overlooking a vast garden of impossible flora, plants with crystalline structures that chimed in harmony, flowers that bloomed with small explosions of colored flame, trees bearing fruit that pulsed with visible energy. Besides, Rias continued, leading him along a path that materialized as they walked, Conva. Enshin rarely survives contact with cosmic necessity. If the imperial essence chose you despite tradition, perhaps tradition required disruption. That's basically what Vados said, Naruto noted. Omething about adapting to changing circumstances. Angels approach such matters through philosophical frameworks, while devils tend toward pragmatic assessment, Rias explained. Different perspectives leading to similar conclusions suggests validity to the observation. As they traversed the garden, Naruto noticed smaller devils, servants perhaps, or specialized caretakers, tending to the unusual plants with practiced precision. They bowed respectfully as Rias passed, their expressions registering curious interest in her unusual companion. Your people seem surprised to see me walking around with you, Naruto observed. The Grimoire ancestral territories rarely host beings of your cosmic classification, Rias confirmed. A dragon emperor in our realm would be remarkable under any circumstances. One accompanied by the first dragon and an angel observer simultaneously is unprecedented. So I'm causing a diplomatic sensation? Naruto asked with a grin. You were causing sensations before ever arriving in our dimension. Rias replied, returning his smile with one that transformed her aristocratic features into something warmer, more genuine. The awakening of a new emperor reverberates through cosmic awareness. That you emerged from a relatively isolated dimension with human origin merely compounds the intrigue. Their path led to a massive courtyard where dozens of devils engaged in what appeared to be combat training. Unlike the chaotic individual styles Naruto associated with ninja training, these sessions demonstrated mathematical precision, magical circles forming in perfect synchronization. Energy attacks launched in choreographed sequences that created complex geometric patterns in the crimson sky. The Grimoire Combat Division, Rias explained. While my family specializes in knowledge and diplomacy, proper defense remains essential, particularly with recent void activities. Naruto watched with professional interest as squads demonstrated coordinated Jickle attacks against constructed targets. Their teamwork is impressive, he noted. Reminds me a little of how Konoha trains Anbu units, but with magic instead of chakra. Demonic energy differs from chakra in fundamental structure. Rias explained, but underlying tactical principles likely share common evolution. Effective combat transcends dimensional boundaries. Would you mind showing me how it works? Naruto asked. Demonic energy, I mean. I've seen bits of angel and dragon power, but devil abilities seem pretty different. Rias considered this request briefly before nodding. A.P. Practical demonstration may prove instructive. She led him to an unoccupied section of the training grounds, instructing nearby squads to continue their exercises elsewhere. Once they had sufficient space, she turned to face him. Demonic energy manifests through intention and will, shaped by intellectual understanding rather than physical conduits. Unlike chakra's dependence on bodily networks, our power flows directly from essence to expression. As she spoke, crimson energy gathered around her hands, forming intricate patterns that resembled the magical circles Naruto had observed throughout the netherworld. The air itself seemed to respond to her power, darkening and densifying around the manifestation. Each devil family possesses hereditary affinities that shape our particular expressions, she continued. The crimson energy expanding to create a complex three-dimensional matrix. The House of Grimoire specializes in destruction and restoration magics, the power to unmake and remake reality within defined parameters. With a gesture that somehow conveyed both elegance and deadly purpose, she directed the energy toward a target stone at the far end of the training area. The Rimson power streaked across the distance, not as a simple projectile but as an expanding wave of coordinated destruction. When it struck, the stone didn't merely break, it disintegrated at the molecular level. Component particles separating in perfect sequence rather than chaotic explosion. Impressive, Naruto acknowledged genuinely. It's like you're telling reality to take itself apart in exactly the way you want. An apt description, Rias confirmed with evident pleasure at his understanding. Precision control distinguishes aristocratic devil abilities from lesser manifestations. Power without direction merely destroys. Power with perfect control transforms. The demonstration attracted attention from nearby training groups, who paused to observe their leader's interaction with the strange visitor. Naruto noticed their interest, along with whispered conversations and speculative glances. Looks like we've got an audience, he noted. Rias followed his gaze, her expression FTing to something more formal as she acknowledged her people's curiosity. Perhaps you might offer a reciprocal demonstration. Many here have never observed imperial abilities directly. Naruto considered this, then nodded with a grin. Seems fair. I'll try not to break anything important. He stepped forward, focusing on the imperial essence that now flowed through his transformed body. The Elden scales visible at his collar and wrists warmed in response, energy gathering not around his hands as with Rias's demonstration, but seeming to emanate from within his very being. Imperial Abili. Ties work differently from both chakra and demonic energy, he explained, drawing on knowledge that felt simultaneously foreign and familiar. It's not just using power, it's being power, becoming an expression of fundamental cosmic force. Golden flame manifested around his form, not consuming or damaging but transforming, reality itself responding to his presence as the essence recognized its authority. Unlike his earlier combat applications, this time Naruto focused on control rather than power, creating intricate patterns that danced through the air in fluid, geometric sequences. The Real flame represents balanced force, neither purely creative nor destructive, but the potential for both simultaneously, he continued, surprising himself with knowledge he hadn't consciously studied. Previous emperors typically emphasized dominance over harmony, but I'm finding their strength in integration. To demonstrate, he directed the golden flames to encircle a different target stone. Rather than destroying it like Rias's attack, the imperial flame transformed the stone, reshaping its fundamental structure into a perfect crystalline sphere that captured and refracted the crimson light of the netherworld sky. The watching devils reacted with undisguised awe, many bowing reflexively in the presence of cosmic power that transcended their dimensional hierarchy. Rias herself studied the demonstration with keen interest, her supernatural eyes tracking the energy patterns with analytical precision. Fascinating, she commented as Naruto allowed the flames to dissipate. You favor Transformation over assertion of dominance. Most beings with access to such fundamental power would emphasize destructive capability to establish supremacy. Breaking stuff is easy, Naruto replied with a shrug. Creating something new is harder, but usually more useful in the long run. That's something I learned long before becoming emperor. Rias regarded him with heightened curiosity. Your philosophy differs markedly from cosmic convention. Perhaps that's precisely why the essence selected you despite traditional parameters. Before Naruto could respond, a communication circle materialized beside them, projecting Tsubaki's image. Lady Grimori, preliminary safeguard protocols have been established ahead of schedule. Your presence is requested at the research division along with Emperor Uzumaki. We'll return immediately, Rias confirmed, dismissing the projection with a gesture. To Naruto, she added, it seems our cultural exchange must conclude earlier than anticipated. I enjoyed it, Naruto replied genuinely as she formed a transportation circle beneath them. Your world is amazing. Different from mine in almost every way, but still somehow familiar in the things that matter. Something in his simple observation seemed to please her, a subtle softening in her aristocratic features before the transportation magic activated, shifting them instantly back to the research division. They materialized in a chamber significantly transformed from their earlier visit. Complex magical apparatus now filled the space, arranged in concentric circles around a central platform. Tiamat and Vados were already present, engaged in technical discussion with Tsubaki and several other researchers. Ah, good, you've returned, Tsubaki acknowledged, adjusting her glasses with practiced precision. We've developed monitoring protocols that should allow controlled engagement with the void connection while minimizing contamination risks. Naruto approached the central platform, studying the intricate magical circles inscribed across its surface. So how does this work exactly? In simplified terms, Tsubaki explained, these arrays will create a dimensionally isolated field around your void-integrated scales, allowing you to activate the connection while containing any potential corruption spread. Simultaneously, our monitoring systems will track data flowing in both directions, potentially providing intelligence on void activities. Basically, we're turning their spyware against them, Naruto summarized, earning a slight smile from Rias and blank looks from the more technically minded researchers. An imprecise but functionally accurate analogy, Tsubaki conceded. The primary question remains whether you can consciously direct the connection rather than merely responding to external activation. Only one way to find out, Naruto replied, stepping onto the platform. What do I need to do? Focus your awareness on the transformed area, Tiamat instructed, moving to a position where she could observe directly, not as something foreign to reject, but as an integrated system under your control. Naruto nodded, closing his eyes to concentrate on the sensation from his shoulder. The transformed scales felt cooler than the rest of his imperial matrix, pulsing with subtle rhythm distinct from his heartbeat. I can feel it, he murmured. It's like listening to a conversation in another room. I can tell something's happening, but can't quite make out the words. The connection remains dormant but receptive, Vados observed, her staff glowing softly as she monitored energy fluctuations. Attempt to establish active engagement rather than passive reception. Naruto deepened his concentration, focusing on the hybrid energy patterns Tsubaki's analysis had revealed. If the void essence had truly integrated with his imperial matrix, then theoretically it should respond to his direction just like any other aspect of his transformed physiology. Come on, he muttered. You're part of me now. That means you work with me, not against me. The transformed scales warmed slightly in response to his focused will, the midnight blue patterns within them pulsing more rapidly. Naruto sensed something shifting, like a door gradually opening between his consciousness and elsewhere. Energy patterns changing, Tsubaki reported, monitoring magical displays that flashed with complex data. The connection activates under his direction. Maintain focus, Tiamat instructed sharply. Direction, not submission. Your will must dominate the interface. Naruto nodded slightly without breaking concentration. The sensation expanded, no longer merely awareness of connection but active engagement with it. Information began flowing into his consciousness, fragmented and alien but increasingly coherent as his mind adapted to the unfamiliar patterns. I'm getting something, he reported, voice tense with effort. Not words exactly, but impressions. Data structures. They're organizing something, coordinating across multiple dimensions. Can you determine target locations? Vados inquired urgently. Naruto's brow furrowed in concentration. It's not that specific. More like strategic priorities. They're categorizing dimensions based on some kind of value system. Something about essence concentration and barrier degradation points. As he spoke, Tsubaki's monitoring systems translated his perceptions into visual representations, complex networks of interconnected dimensions with certain clusters highlighted in pulsing patterns. They appear to be targeting nexus points between dimensional clusters, Rias observed, studying the emerging visual data. Locations where multiple realities connect through natural boundaries. Not random opportunism. Tiamat concluded grimly. Strategic weakening of multiversal architecture. The connection suddenly intensified, void energy pulsing more strongly through the transformed scales. Naruto gasped as information flow accelerated beyond his ability to process coherently. Something's changing, he managed through gritted teeth. They've noticed the connection. It's responding. Warning signals activated throughout the monitoring system as energy patterns shifted dramatically. The midnight blue within Naruto's transformed scales expanded, temporarily overwhelming the golden imperial patterns. Connection reversal, Tsubaki reported urgently. Void systems attempting to establish dominant information flow. Terminate the engagement, Tiamat commanded. Wait, Naruto countermanded, focusing through the chaotic information surge. I can handle this. They're showing me something important. Through the connection, images formed in his mind, not visual in conventional sense but conceptual representations his consciousness translated into comprehensible form. He saw massive structures existing between dimensions, vast machinery harnessing void energy in concentrated streams directed at specific points in the multiversal fabric. They're building something, he reported, the effort of maintaining controlled connection evident in his strained voice. Massive void conduits targeting specific dimensional boundaries. They're calling it the convergence array. This intelligence justifies the risk, Vados determined, her staff glowing brighter as she reinforced the monitoring protocols. Continue as long as safely possible. The connection pulsed again, void energy patterns shifting as though responding to external direction. Naruto sensed attention focusing on him. Not merely automated systems but conscious awareness examining the unexpected connection. Someone's noticing me specifically, he warned. Not just the systems, but an actual entity. The architect, Tiamat hissed, moving closer to the platform. Disengage immediately. Before Naruto could respond, a voice that wasn't truly a voice resonated directly through the connection into his consciousness. Interesting approach, Emperor. Most vessels would attempt severance rather than utilization. Your methodology continues to diverge from established patterns. He communication carried no emotional inflection, yet somehow conveyed clinical appreciation for his tactical choice. Naruto maintained his focus, refusing to break connection despite the danger. Why are you attacking multiple dimensions? He challenged through the mental link. What does the convergence array actually do? A sensation resembling amusement rippled through the connection. Attack implies enmity. Our purpose transcends such limited conceptualization. The array merely accelerates inevitable cosmic evolution toward optimal entropy state. By destroying countless worlds and lives, Naruto countered. Transformation, not destruction. Current dimensional configurations maintain artificial separation that impedes natural void integration. The array restores appropriate balance. Even through the alien communication, Naruto recognized the dangerous half-truth in this explanation. Balance doesn't mean everything becomes void. That's not balance. That's elimination of everything else. Perspective limits understanding. Your integration experiment demonstrates the potential. Imperial and void energies combined rather than opposed. Expand this principle to cosmic scale. That is the array's purpose. The monitoring systems flashed warning signals as void energy surged through the connection, attempting to expand beyond the transformed scales. Naruto fought to maintain control, pushing back against the infiltration with focused will. Enough, he stated firmly, both aloud and through the connection. I've seen what I needed to. This conversation is over. For now, the presence acknowledged. Already withdrawing. But your unique configuration ensures we will communicate again, Emperor Naruto Uzumaki. Your integration approach intrigues us. Perhaps in time, understanding will follow. With that final statement, the presence receded. Naruto immediately terminated the active connection, though the transformed scales continued pulsing with residual energy. He opened his eyes to find the others watching him with expressions ranging from concern to calculated assessment. You spoke with a Void Architect directly, Tiamat stated, her tone suggesting both disapproval and reluctant respect. Few beings survive such mental contact without corruption. The monitoring systems registered minimal contamination spread, Tsubaki reported, studying the data displays with intense focus. Emperor Uzumaki appears to have maintained dominance throughout the exchange. What did you learn? Rias asked directly, approaching the platform. Naruto stepped down, rolling his shoulder where the transformed scales had returned to their normal state, the midnight blue patterns once again in balanced proportion with the golden imperial energy. They're building something called the Convergence Array, massive structures that exist between dimensions, designed to channel void energy against specific boundary points. He frowned, trying to organize the fragmented information he'd received. Their goal isn't just destroying worlds, they want to transform the entire multiverse, make everything a hybrid between normal reality and void. Using your transformation as a template, Vados concluded, her normally composed features showing rare concern. They've adapted their cosmic strategy based on observing your unique integration pattern. That's messed up, Naruto muttered. They're weaponizing something my body did naturally to survive. The void adapts with terrifying efficiency, Tiamat noted grimly. Strategic imitation has always been their evolutionary advantage. Rias turned to Tsubaki. Compile all monitoring data immediately. Cross-reference with our previous void incursion records to identify potential array construction sites. Already underway, the researcher confirmed. Magical displays shifting rapidly as analysis programs executed. Preliminary pattern recognition suggests 17 possible dimensional coordinates that match observed energy signatures. We need to verify these locations physically, Vados decided. If construction has indeed begun, direct intervention may be necessary. The Dragon Courts should be informed, Tiamat added. This threat transcends traditional jurisdictional boundaries. As they discussed strategic responses, Naruto noticed something odd, a subtle resonance from the transformed scales, diff. Rent from the connection activation but equally distinct. He focused on the sensation, trying to identify its source. Something else is happening, he interrupted, drawing their attention. The connection changed somehow. It's not active like before, but it's tuned differently. Like it's receiving on a new frequency. Before anyone could respond, reality rippled around them, not the control D-dimensional transport they'd experienced previously, but violent distortion that suggested fundamental instability. Warning systems throughout the research division activated simultaneously, magical barriers flickering as they strained against sudden pressure. Dimensional breach in progress, Tsubaki announced, monitoring systems flashing critical alerts. Multiple entry points detected throughout Grimoire territory. Void incursion, Rias demanded, crimson energy already gathering around her hands in preparation for defense. Negative, Tsubaki responded, confusion evident in her normally clinical voice. Energy signatures don't match void patterns. This is something different. The answer materialized without further speculation as reality tore open within the laboratory itself. Unlike the precision-cut dimensional entry the architect had utilized, these breaches appeared ragged and unstable, as though forced through resistance. From within them emerged figures that defied conventional description, humanoid in basic shape but composed of crystalline structures that constantly shifted between solid and liquid states, their surfaces reflecting distorted images of their surroundings. Boundary Wardens, Vados identified, her staff already glowing with defensive energy. Interdimensional enforcers from the crystalline dominion. What do they want here? Rias demanded, positioning herself protectively before her research team. The answer came as the crystalline entities focused their featureless faces toward Naruto, their forms solidifying into more aggressive configurations. Dragon Emperor Uzumaki. One spoke, its voice resonating directly into their minds rather than disturbing air. You stand accused of cosmic treaty violation through unauthorized void integration. The Dominion Council demands your immediate surrender for containment and essence extraction. What? Naruto responded, genuinely confused. I didn't violate any treaty. The void attacked me, and my body adapted naturally. Intent irrelevant. Outcome prohibited, another entity stated. Imperial Void Hybridization classified as Class 1 Cosmic Violation under Multiversal Stability Accord, Section 73.5. There are laws about this. Naruto asked incredulously, looking between Tiamat and Vados for explanation. Ancient prohibitions rarely invoked, Vados confirmed, positioning herself between Naruto and the crystalline entities. However, the Dominion lacks enforcement authority over Imperial matters. Their jurisdiction is expressly limited to boundary maintenance. Ordinary circumstances necessitate expanded mandate, the first entity countered. Void contamination spreads. The Emperor represents infection vector. Containment protocols activated. Tiamat's form began shifting toward her draconic nature, scales erupting across her skin as she grew larger. The Dragon Courts acknowledge no Dominion authority over Imperial succession or transformation parameters. Your presence here constitutes jurisdictional overreach. Additionally, Rias interjected with cold aristocratic authority, this incursion violates established netherworld sovereignty. The Grem, Ori territories operate under direct malprotection. Your unannounced entry constitutes act of dimensional aggression. The crystalline entities appeared unmoved by these objections, their forms FTing into increasingly weapon-like configurations. Jurisdictional disputes irrelevant to primary directive. The Emperor will be contained. Resistance necessitates escalated response parameters. Without further warning, they attacked simultaneously, crystalline limbs extending at impossible speeds toward Naruto from multiple directions. The Research Division's protective barriers activated automatically, slowing but not stopping the assault. Naruto reacted instinctively, Imperial flame manifesting around his body in a protective shell. The crystalline appendages struck this barrier and shattered on contact, fragments dissolving into light before they hit the ground. I don't want to fight you, he called out, maintaining defensive posture. There's a bigger threat we should be focusing on. The void is building something that threatens all dimensions. Known information, one entity responded. Convergence array construction detected across 17-dimensional coordinates. Kanta, inment of contaminated Emperor takes priority over array interruption per Dominion protocols. That's insane, Naruto objected. You'd let them build a weapon that could destroy everything just to enforce some ancient rule I never even knew about. Cosmic law transcends individual circumstance, the entity replied implacably. Submit for containment. Before Naruto could respond further, Rias stepped forward. Crimson energy swirling around her in patterns of increasing complexity. As sovereign authority within Grimoire territory, I formally invoke right of sanctuary for Emperor Uzumaki Interdimensional Accord of Mutual Defense. The declaration appeared to give the crystalline entities momentary pause, their forms shifting less aggressively as they processed this legal maneuver. Sanctuary invocation requires formal council acknowledgement, one finally responded. Temporary suspension of enforcement granted pending official determination. You have 24 hours to secure necessary authorities. The Netherworld Court recognizes no external time constraints on sovereign decisions, Rias countered smoothly. However, as courtesy between cosmic authorities, we will expedite the formal documentation. The entities conferred through some silent communication before responding. Compromise accepted with conditions. Dominion observers remain in Netherworld territory pending resolution. The Emperor remains under monitoring protocols. Acceptable, provided observers respect Grimoire jurisdictional boundaries and submit to standard diplomatic registration, Rias agreed. Her aristocratic training evident in the flawless diplomatic negotiation. The crystalline entities withdrew partially, their forms becoming less overtly threatening though remaining vigilant. Several dissolved back through the dimensional breaches, while 3 remained, positioning themselves at equidistant points around the laboratory's perimeter. Once immediate conflict appeared averted, Rias turned to Tiamat and Vados. I believe we require urgent consultation regarding these unexpected developments. Agreed, Vados confirmed, her staff still glowing with potential energy. The Ominion's involvement complicates an already precarious situation. Tiamat, returning gradually to more humanoid proportions, fixed the remaining crystalline entities with ancient disdain. The Drago Courts will address this jurisdictional overreach formally. Expect significant diplomatic consequences. Naruto, maintaining cautious readiness despite the tentative resolution, addressed Rias directly. What exactly did you do with that right of sanctuary thing? Invoked ancient interdimensional law that temporarily places you under netherworld protection, she explained quietly. It buys us time to address both the Dominion's claims and the more pressing void threat without immediate conflict. Thanks, Naruto replied sincerely. I'm still catching up on all these cosmic laws everyone expects me to already know about. Previous emperors spent centuries in preparation before public acknowledgement, Tiamat noted. Your accelerated awakening creates unavoidable knowledge gaps, which certain factions apparently intend to exploit, Vados added, her tone suggesting deeper political currents beneath the surface confrontation. Rias gestured toward a secure conference chamber adjacent to the main laboratory. Let's continue this discussion privately. Tsubaki, please coordinate with security to accommodate our unexpected observers while maintaining appropriate distance from sensitive operations. The researcher nodded, already implementing protocols through magical displays. The three remaining crystalline entities made no move to interfere as Rias led Naruto, Tiamat and Vados into the conference chamber. Magical barriers activating behind them to ensure privacy. Once secured, Rias's composed diplomatic demeanor gave way to more genuine concern. This is an unprecedented situation. The crystalline dominion rarely involves itself directly in affairs beyond boundary maintenance. Their involvement suggests external influence, Vados observed, her staff tapping thoughtfully against the floor. The timing, immediately following our discovery of the convergence array, cannot be coincidental. The void manipulates existing cosmic authorities against each other, Tiamat concluded grimly. Divide and conquer methodology applied to dimensional politics. Naruto leaned against the conference table, processing these developments. So these crystal guys show up right when we discover what the void is planning, trying to take me out of the picture by claiming I broke some rule I never knew existed. That's suspiciously convenient timing. Indeed, Rias agreed. The Dominion maintains rigid neutrality in most interdimensional conflicts. Their sudden interest in imperial transformation parameters suggests information flow from void sources. But why old they listen to anything the void tells them? Naruto questioned. Aren't they supposed to be protecting dimensional boundaries? The crystalline dominion evolved from what was once called the Order of Cosmic Constancy. Vados explained. Their primary directive has always been maintaining established patterns against change, any change, regardless of purpose or necessity. Cosmic fundamentalists, Tiamat added with ancient disdain. They believe established order must be preserved exactly as codified, even when circumstances evolve beyond original parameters. So they'd rather enforce outdated rules than adapt to new threats, Naruto summarized, shaking his head. Sounds like some of the elders back in Konoha. An apt comparison, Rias noted with a hint of amusement despite the situation's gravity. Institutional resistance to necessary change exists across dimensional boundaries. The immediate question remains how to proceed regarding both the Dominion's claims and the convergence array intelligence. Vados redirected, ever practical. The sanctuary invocation provides temporary protection, but permanent resolution requires formal imperial response to their accusations, Rias explained. Which would normally involve Dragon Court proceedings, Tiamat added, a process typically requiring months of preparation. Naruto straightened, determination replacing confusion. We don't have months. If what I saw through the connection is accurate, the void is already building their array across multiple dimensions. We need to verify those locations and figure out how to stop construction before it's completed. Direct action would validate the Dominion's accusations of imperial overreach, Vados cautioned. However, inaction while the array proceeds presents greater cosmic risk. What if we turned this around? Naruto suggested, the strategic thinking that had served him well as a shinobi emerging naturally. Instead of defending against their accusations, we make the Dominion part of the solution. The three immortal beings regarded him with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. Elaborate, Tiamat prompted. The Dominion's whole purpose is protecting dimensional boundaries. Right, and the convergence array specifically targets those boundaries. So their own mandate should require them to prioritize stopping the array over worrying about my weird scale situation. Naruto rotated his shoulder where the transformed scales continued their subtle iridescent shifting. If we share the intelligence we've gathered, they'd have to act or add. They're neglecting their primary responsibility. Vados considered this approach, her expression suggesting qualified approval. The strategy has merit, refocusing the Dominion's attention toward the greater threat while positioning the Emperor's unique condition as potential asset rather than violation. Political judo, Rias observed with evident appreciation. Using their momentum against them rather than opposing directly. A very devil-like approach, Emperor Uzumaki. I'll take that as a compliment, Naruto replied with a grin. Growing up as the village troublemaker taught me song. Times the best way to handle authority is to give them a bigger problem than you. Implementation requires careful diplomatic framing, Tiamat noted, though her tone suggested grudging approval of the approach. The Dominion responds poorly to perceived manipulation. Then we present it as transparent cooperation, Rias suggested. I can arrange a formal presentation of our findings to both Dominion observers and Netherworld authorities simultaneously. Frame it as multi-faction response to universal threat. My presence would add Angel's Council credibility to the proceedings, Vados offered, while maintaining official neutrality in the jurisdictional dispute. As they developed this approach further, Naruto felt the transformed scales pulse once more with that strange resonance he'd noticed earlier. Not the active connection he'd established, but something more passive, like receiving information rather than exchanging it. There's something else, he interrupted their planning. The void connection. It's still transmitting something, but differently than before. Not two-way communication, more like a tracking signal. Alarm crossed the others' faces simultaneously. Quote, could the convergence array be targeting your location specifically? Rias asked urgently. Before Naruto could respond, the conference chamber's magical barriers fluctuated wildly as reality itself shuddered around them. Warning systems throughout the research division activated at maximum intensity, magical displays flashing urgent alerts. Tsubaki's voice came through emergency communication Annals. Multiple dimensional breaches detected. Energy signatures match void patterns but with unprecedented concentration levels. This isn't a standard incursion, it's a directed assault. Rias activated view screens showing exterior conditions. The crimson sky above Grimoire territory had darkened to near blackness as hundreds, of void rifts opened simultaneously, each spewing forth not merely harvesters but massive constructs composed of void essence shaped into weapons of war. They're attacking the entire netherworld, she breathed, shock momentarily breaking through her aristocratic composure. This is a full-scale invasion. The connection, Naruto realized with horror. They weren't just tracking me. They were using me to map netherworld defenses, identify weak points in the dimensional barriers. Exactly as they did with your world, Tiamat confirmed grimly. But at vastly larger scale. The view screens showed netherworld defense forces mobilizing across Grimoire territory, devils of various ranks forming battle formations as massive magical arrays activated throughout the region. The three crystalline entities that had remained as observers now faced outward toward the void incursion. Their forms shifting into combat configurations. The Dominion observers request temporary alliance against common threat, Tsubaki reported through the communication system. They acknowledge void priority supersedes jurisdictional dispute. Granted, Rias responded immediately, already moving toward the chamber exit. Activate all defense protocols. Alert the Mao UNCIL that Grimoire territory faces Class 1 void incursion. As they emerged from the conference room, the full scale of the crisis became apparent. The research division's reinforced structure shud. Dread under assault as void entities targeted key infrastructure throughout the region. Emergency transportation circles activated automatically, bringing civilian devils to designated shelter areas High combat units deployed to defensive positions. We need to coordinate resistance, Vados stated, her staff glowing with intensifying energy. Fragmented response plays to void tactical advantage. The Grimoire Command Center would provide optimal coordination capabilities, Rias suggested. It maintains secure connections to all defense units throughout our territory. Go, Naruto decided. Help organize your people's defenses. I'll take the fight directly to them. Unadvisable, Tiamat countered sharply. Your Imperial transformation remains incomplete. Direct confrontation with concentrated void forces carries unacceptable risk. They're here because of me, Naruto insisted, the Imperial scales warming as his resolve hardened. They used my connection to target this dimension specifically. I'm not hiding while others fight my battle. Before further objections could be raised, the laboratory's reinforced ceiling shattered as a massive void construct crashed through defensive barriers. Unlike the relatively humanoid harvesters they'd encountered previously, this entity resembled a grotesque amalgamation of industrial machinery and organic components, all composed of shifting void essence that ate away at reality itself where it touched. Void Behemoth, Vados identified, immediately raising defensive barriers around the research personnel. Siege-class entity designed for structural destruction. The creature oriented toward Naruto immediately, void sensors locking onto the Imperial essence with predatory focus. Multiple appendages extended simultaneously, ACH terminating in different weapons conceptualized from void energy, blades, crushing implements, and siphoning mechanisms designed to extract energy directly. Naruto didn't hesitate. Imperial flame erupted around his body in a golden aura as he launched himself directly at the massive entity. Unlike his previous cautious applications of Imperial power, this time he channeled it with furious NSITY, each strike carrying not just energy but focused will that imposed order upon chaos. Where his flame-wreathed fists connected with void matter, the entity's substance didn't merely burn but NS for med, Imperial energy forcing structural change at the fundamental level. The behemoth recoiled from this unexpected counter, void sensors recalibrating to assess this threat model. Its tactical systems analyze your attack patterns. Tiamat called out, her own form shifting toward combat configuration. Vary your approach to prevent adaptive defense. Naruto nodded, immediately switching tactics. Rather than direct physical confrontation, he formed a shadow clone that appeared already wreathed in complementary Imperial flame. Together they circled the creature at blinding speed, attacking from multiple angles with unpredictable timing. Meanwhile, Rias coordinated defensive measures for her research team while simultaneously launching her own attacks, Crimson Destruction Magic striking with surgical precision at the behemoth's sensor arrays and stabilizing structures. Vados maintained protective barriers around vulnerable personnel, her staff occasionally directing precise beams of celestial energy at critical junction points in the void entity's composition. The behemoth roared, not with physical sound but psychic pressure that threatened to shatter consciousness itself. ITY warped around it as void energy poured through the breach it had created, reinforcing its structure faster than they could damage it. It's drawing power directly from a dimensional rift, Vados observed. Conventional attacks cannot overcome this regeneration rate. Then we close the rift, Naruto decided, dispersing his shadow clone to absorb its combat observations. He focused on the spatial distortion above the behemoth, identifying the same pattern of anchor points he'd observed in previous dimensional breaches. The transformed scales on his shoulder pulsed in resonance with the rift, the hybrid energy responding to its void counterpart. Rather than rejecting this connection, Naruto intentionally strengthened it, using the established link to better understand the rift's structure. I need to get closer to the breach, he called out to the others. I can close it, but I have to reach the anchor points directly. Too dangerous, Tiamat objected, now fully transformed over combat form. Not the colossal dragon she'd manifested in Naruto's world, but a more concentrated version still towering over the laboratory space. Void concentration at the breach point would overwhelm even Imperial resistance. Not if we coordinate, Rias countered, crimson energy gathering around her hands in complex patterns. I can create a momentary pathway through my family's destruction magic. It would temporarily neutralize void essence along a narrow corridor. And I will stabilize local dimensional constants to prevent reality collapse during the procedure, Vados added, our staff already tracing complex symbols in the air. Naruto nodded, gathering Imperial flame around himself in concentrated formation. On your signal, the behemoth sensed their strategy, multiple appendages converging to block access to the rift above. Tiamat intercepted these with draconic ferocity, her claws and teeth tearing through void matter while her wings created buffeting force that disrupted the entity's structural cohesion. Now, Rias commanded, releasing crimson destruction energy in a precisely controlled beam that cut through the behemoth's mass like a surgical laser, creating a clean path directly to the rift. Simultaneously, Vados' staff struck the ground, releasing concentric waves of celestial energy that stabilized reality around this corridor, preventing void contamination from spreading laterally. The combination created a momentary pathway through the behemoth's mass directly to the dimensional breach. Naruto launched himself through this opening with perfect timing, imperial flame surrounding him in protective layers as he accelerated toward the rift. The void energy intensified exponentially as he approached, pressing against his protective aura with increasing pressure. The transformed scales on his shoulder responded to this proximity, the hybrid energy patterns shifting rapidly as they interfaced with the pure void essence. Rather than fighting this reaction, Naruto embraced it, using the integrated void component of his transformation to understand the rift's fundamental structure. There, he identified, spotting the 5 anchor points maintaining the dimensional tier. Unlike previous breaches, these anchors pulsed with concentrated void essence, making direct contact potentially catastrophic. Drawing on both Imperial Flame and the hybrid energy from his transformed scales, Naruto created 5 precisely calibrated energy projectiles, each containing balanced proportions of Imperial and Void essence specifically tuned to disrupt the corresponding anchor point. Close, he commanded, releasing all 5 simultaneously while pouring his will into the command. The hybrid projectiles struck their targets with perfect accuracy. For a terrifying moment, the rift expanded rather than contracting, void energy surging outward in what appeared to be catastrophic failure. Then, abruptly, the pattern reversed, the void energy collapse. Inward as the anchor points destabilized in carefully orchestrated sequence. The rift imploded with concussive force, the dimensional breach sealing itself as reality reasserted natural coherence. Without its power source, the behemoth's structure began deteriorating rapidly, void essence losing cohesion as Tiamat, Rias and Vados pressed their combined attack. Naruto descended through the disintegrating creature, landing among his allies as the void entity collapsed into dissipating particles. The laboratory lay in ruins around them, but the immediate threat had been neutralized. SSIVE adaptation of void imperial hybrid energy, Vados noted, studying Naruto with increased interest. You're learning to utilize the integration rather than merely containing it. Necessity drives innovation, Tiamat acknowledged, her form gradually returning to more humanoid proportions. Though the risk remained substantial. Before they could further assess the situation, multiple cation circles activated simultaneously around Rias, projecting images of different regions throughout Grimoire territory. Each showed similar battles raging across the netherworld landscape, void force pouring through dimensional breaches while devil defenders fought with varying degrees of success. The incursion extends beyond our immediate location, Rias observed grimly. They're attacking systematically across our dimensional boundaries. Testing defenses at multiple points, Vados analyzed. Standard void tactical protocol. Identify weaknesses through distributed pressure. We need coordinate counterattacks across all fronts, Naruto suggested, already thinking strategically. Closing individual rifts won't help if hundreds more remain active. Rias nodded in agreement. The command center would provide necessary coordination capabilities. If we can reach it intact. The building shuddered again as explosions echoed from multiple directions, suggesting the research division remained under direct assault. Tsubaki appeared through a partially functioning doorway, her normally immaculate appearance now disheveled from emergency operations. Primary transportation circles have been compromised, she reported. Void entities specifically targeted dimensional transit infrastructure. Conventional movement remains our only option for reaching the command center. They're isolating key defensive positions. Tiamat observed. Standard siege tactics adapted to dimensional warfare. Naruto considered their options, then turned to Vados. Can you transport us directly with your staff? Like you did at Zenith. The angel shook her head slightly. Void interference disrupts precise dimensional coordinates. Attempted transport could result in dangerous displacement or fragmentary materialization. Then we fight our way through, Naruto decided. Creating multiple shadow clones, he sent them racing ahead to scout conditions beyond the laboratory. My clones will identify the safest route and create diversions where needed. Acceptable strategy, Rias agreed, already organizing remaining research personnel into protected formation. Tsubaki, implement emerge, NCY protocols for sensitive research materials. Anything that cannot be secured must be destroyed to prevent void acquisition. As the researcher hurried to comply, Tiamat addressed Naruto directly. Your tactical adaptation continues to impress, Vessel. Perhaps there are advantages to your unconventional background after all. High praise from the first dragon, Naruto replied with a grin despite the dire circumstances. I think you're actually starting to like me. Tolerate, Tiamat corrected, though without her earlier disdain. Your methods remain unorthodox but demonstrate occasional effectiveness. Their exchange was interrupted as one of Naruto's shadow clones dispersed, sending information directly to his consciousness. Southeast corridor provides clearest path, he reported. 3 void entities of moderate size blocking the main exit, but structural integrity remains sound in that direction. Then we move immediately, Rias decided, gathering her personnel into defensive formation. Vados, if you could maintain rear protection. Tiamat and Naruto at point position, with my forces securing the civilians between. The strategic distribution of their strengths demonstrated Rias's tactical acumen, positioning their most powerful offensive capabilities at front and rear, while concentrating protective measures around vulnerable personnel. All nodded in agreement with this arrangement. As they moved through the damaged research division toward the identified exit, Naruto found himself advancing alongside Tiamat, both alert for void manifestations ahead. The vessel's combat effectiveness exceeds initial assessment, the ancient dragon noted quietly as they navigated debris-strewn corridors. Your previous conflicts prepared you well for dimensional warfare despite limited experience. Fighting the Akatsuki, Madara, Kagaya, you adapt or you die, Naruto responded simply. Different enemies, same principles. Find the weakness, protect your people, never give up. Simplistic but functionally sound, Tiamat acknowledged. Previous emperors often lost effectiveness through overcomplicated strategic frameworks. Their conversation paused as they approached the southeast exit where, as Naruto's clone had reported, 3 void entities maintained position. Unlike the massive behemoth, these resembled the more standard harvester configuration, though significantly larger and more heavily armored with void conceptualized weaponry. Elite harvesters, Tiamat identified. Coordination class entities designed for tactical control of lesser void manifestations. So taking them out might disrupt the smaller ones around the complex, Naruto suggested. Correct, though they likely maintain connection to higher command functions regardless of local casualties. Naruto studied the entities' positioning, noting how they maintained triangular formation that covered all potential approach vectors. Standard ambush configuration, he observed. They're expecting frontal assault. Then we shall disappoint their tactical projections, Tiamat replied, a predatory gleam entering her ancient eyes. Without further discussion, they launched simultaneous attacks from opposite directions, Naruto creating a diversion with multiple shadow clones approaching openly from the front, while Tiamat circled through a partially collapsed section of ceiling to strike from above. The void entities responded immediately to Naruto's clones, void weapons extending to intercept what they perceived as the primary threat. This left them vulnerable to Tiamat's aerial assault, her partially draconic form descending with devastating impact that shattered one entity before it could recalibrate its defenses. The remaining 2 adjusted quickly, one engaging Tiamat directly while the other launched concentrated void projectiles toward Naruto's position. He dodged with practiced efficiency, the Imperial Flame providing enhanced speed and reflexes beyond even his considerable shinobi capabilities. Their coordination degrades when separated, Naruto observed, noting how the entities' movements became less synchronized as they focused on different targets. They share processing resources. Exploit the vulnerability, Tiamat called back, her claws tearing through void matter as she pressed her advantage against the second entity. Naruto needed no further encouragement. Creating another shadow clone, he implemented a variation of his classic transformation technique, the clone assuming female form while maintaining full Imperial capabilities. The unexpected appearance of a second Emperor variant momentarily confused the remaining entity's tactical systems, creating a crucial millisecond of processing delay. Naruto capitalized immediately, Real and transformed clones attacking from different angles with perfectly synchronized Imperial flame techniques. The void entity attempted to adapt, its form shifting to defend multiple attack vectors simultaneously. This divided focus prevented effective concentration against either threat, allowing Naruto's transformed clone to penetrate its defenses while he himself targeted its central processing node. Golden Flame met Void Essence in catastrophic reaction, the entity's form destabilizing as Imperial energy imposed order upon chaos at the fundamental level. Unlike conventional destruction, this transformation converted void matter into dissipating light that could not be reclaimed or reprocessed by other void manifestations. With all three elite harvesters neutralized, the exit stood clear. Naruto signaled the others to advance while maintaining vigilance for additional threats. Rias led her personnel forward in tight formation, Vados bringing up the rear with protective bar. Rears still maintained around the most vulnerable. Impressive coordination, Rias commented as they reached Naruto's position. You fight as though you've trained together for years rather than days. The vessel demonstrates unusual compatibility with draconic combat methodologies, Tiamat noted, rejoining them in more humanoid form. Adaptation rather than rigidity serves well in chaotic conditions. They emerged from the research division into streets filled with ongoing combat. Devil Defense forces engaged void entities throughout the district, magical attacks illuminating the darkened sky in brilliant flashes. Above, aerial combat units mounted on various creatures engaged void constructs that resembled massive predatory birds composed of shifting darkness. The command center lies 2 districts north. Rias informed them, orienting toward a towering structure visible even through the chaos. We'll need to move quickly while avoiding major conflict concentrations. My clone can create diversions at key intersections, Naruto offered. Draw void attention away from our actual route. And I shall provide aerial reconnaissance, Tiamat added, wings already extending from her back in preparation for flight. Before they could implement this plan, reality rippled before them as a precision-cut dimensional rift opened directly in their path. Unlike the chaotic void breaches surrounding them, this portal maintained perfect geometric stability, a hallmark of controlled transition rather than forced entry. Through this dimensional doorway stepped the 3 crystalline entities that had earlier served as Dominion observers. Their forms had transformed completely from their previous configurations, now resembling armored knights composed entirely of living crystal that shifted colors with each movement. Dragon Emperor Uzumaki, one addressed formally. The crystalline Dominion acknowledges strategic priority revision. Void incursion constitutes greater interdimensional threat than transformation irregularities. You don't say, Naruto replied with barely concealed sarcasm. Figured that out all on your own, did you? Diplomatic courtesy suggests restraint in current circumstances. Vados murmured, though her tone suggested some sympathy with his reaction. The crystalline entities either missed or ignored the sarcasm, continuing with formal precision. The Dominion Council extends provisional alliance proposal against common enemy. Jurisdictional disputes suspended pending void containment. Alliance accepted. Rias responded before Naruto could formulate a less diplomatic reply. Your assistance reaching the command center would be most appreciated. Coordinate provided. Transition portal established. The entities gestured toward the dimensional doorway they had arrived through. Direct spatial bypass to command center interior. Dominion circumvention of void interference patterns implemented. Rias exchanged significant looks with Vados and Tiamat, silently conferring about this unexpected offer. After brief consideration, Vados approached the portal, her staff analyzing the dimensional construction with careful precision. The pathway appears stable and correctly configured, she confirmed. Dominion Spatial Engineering maintains reputation for precision. Then we accept your assistance with gratitude, Rias stated formally to the crystalline entities. The Netherworld acknowledges this cooperation in our records. The entities inclined their crystalline heads in synchronized acknowledgement before taking defensive positions around the portal. We shall maintain transition stability while you proceed. Additional Dominion forces engage void entities throughout dimensional boundaries. With no time to waste on further discussion, they proceeded through the portal in careful order, Naruto first to ensure safety, followed by civilian personnel, then Rias, Vados, and finally Tiamat, who cast a final assessing look at their crystalline allies before entering. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.